Major penalty. Major penalty. A rivals to lovers hockey romance. Tatum Langley. Copyright 2026 Tatum Langley. All rights reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author, except for brief quotations in a book review. This is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are the product of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, events, or locales is entirely coincidental. First edition, 2026. For everyone who ever fell and got back up. The only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance. Alan Watts. Contents. Prologue. Before I knew his name. Chapter 1. One-party rule. Chapter 2. The Stranger Hypothesis. Chapter 3. New Blood. Chapter 4. Off the Record. Chapter 5. The Interview. Chapter 6. Roommate Rules. Chapter 7. Line Change. Chapter 8. Byline. Chapter 9. Thin Ice. Chapter 10. Breakaway. Chapter 11. Power Play. Chapter 12. Interference. Chapter 13. 5-Minute Major. Chapter 14. Penalty Box. Chapter 15. The Blind Pass. Chapter 16. Icing. Chapter 17. Spearing. Chapter 18. The Dressing Room. Chapter 19. Too Many Men. Chapter 20. Sibling Rule. Chapter 21. Michigan State. Chapter 22. Overtime. Chapter 23. The Full 60. Chapter 24. Postgame. Epilogue. Prologue. Before I knew his name. Ren's POV. The worst part isn't standing here. The worst part is that my hand is raised. Knuckles almost touching wood. And I can't make myself knock. Cole's bedroom door is closed, which it never is. Not when he's home. Not when he has people over. My brother has always been the kind of person who leaves every door open, his bedroom, the fridge, his feelings. All of it, wide open, all the time, like the concept of privacy never occurred to him. So the closed door already feels wrong. The laughing on the other side makes it worse. There are two of them in there. Cole, I know his laugh the way I know my own heartbeat, low and easy and a little too loud. And someone else. Someone whose laugh I only heard once. 3 weeks ago. At a party I wasn't supposed to be at, in a hallway I stumbled into by accident, next to a guy whose name I never asked. I told myself that was the smart move. No name, no attachment. No attachment, no problem. I hear his voice now, just a few words, muffled through the door, and my stomach drops so fast I have to put my free hand flat on the wall to stay standing. I know that voice. I know exactly how that voice sounds at 2 in the morning when the party noise has faded and it's just two people on a back porch pretending they're not interested in each other. I know how it sounds in the quiet. I know things about that voice I have absolutely no business knowing. And it is coming from my brother's bedroom. Ren. I spin around. Finn is standing at the end of the hallway in Cole's kitchen, holding a bag of chips, looking at me like I've lost my mind. My little brother. 18 years old, a full foot taller than me now, and still wearing that expression he's had since he was 6, like he's trying to work out if something is funny or concerning, and leaning toward both. Hey. My voice comes out normal. I have no idea how. What are you doing? I was going to knock. I drop my hand. Look at the door. Look back at him. Just waiting for them to finish a conversation. Finn glances at the door, then at me. They've been in there like an hour. Cole's showing his new best friend his signed jerseys. He says new best friend with the particular flatness of a youngest sibling who has watched the older one adopt every teammate like a stray dog his whole life. You want chips? I should say yes. I should go eat chips in the kitchen with Finn and wait for Cole to open the door himself, the way he always does, and everything would just happen the way it was going to happen and I would deal with it. Instead I say, Finn. Who's in there with him? He tilts the chip bag. The transfer. Price. You know, the center they've been talking about. Cole's obsessed with him. Says he's the best player they've had since. I stop hearing him. Price. I don't have a first name. I never got a first name, because I was smart, I was careful, I walked away clean 3 weeks ago with nothing attached to me, nothing to find me later, nothing to complicate the very uncomplicated life I have built around surviving in the orbit of my brother's world without getting pulled into it. Price. Finn is still talking. 2 assists in the first scrimmage and Cole basically adopted him on the spot. He's been here like 4 times this week. I think Cole's in love, honestly. The laugh comes from behind the door again. Easy. Relaxed. Like someone who has no idea that the girl he spent one night with 3 weeks ago is standing 8 feet away trying to remember how to breathe. Ren, you okay? Fine, I say. I'm completely fine. I look at Cole's door. I think about knocking. I think about not knocking. I think about the back porch of that party, the way he moved over on the steps without being asked, like he already knew I needed the space. I think about how I told myself, 3 times, walking home in the dark, I don't feel bad about this. I don't feel bad about this. I don't feel bad about this. Guilt is funny like that. The door handle moves. My heart stops. Cole steps out first, mid-sentence, turning back to whoever's still in the room. Tell coach that Thursday doesn't work, I've got Ren's. He sees me. His face does the thing it does, lights up, just for a second, genuine, before he gets his captain face back. Hey. I didn't know you were coming. Surprise visit, I say. My voice is still normal. I don't know how I'm doing this. I should be in theater. Perfect timing. Cole steps back, pulls the door fully open. Come meet. The guy in the doorway is tall. Dark hair, a little too long. He's wearing a gray Ashford hoodie and holding a framed jersey I recognize as Cole's most prized possession, which means Cole trusts him the way Cole trusts almost no one. He looks up. Our eyes meet. And the whole hallway goes completely quiet in a way that has nothing to do with sound. I watch him process it. It happens in less than 2 seconds, recognition, then a wall, then something careful and controlled where the recognition used to be. He's good at it. Faster than me. Maddox, this is my sister. Ren. Cole has no idea. He is standing between us with his hand on my shoulder and his hand gesturing toward Maddox and he has absolutely, completely, no idea. Ren, this is Price. Best center I've ever played with, not that I'd say that to his face. You just said it to my face, Maddox says. His voice is level. Cole laughs. Ren's a journalist. You'll probably have to do an interview with her at some point for the paper. She doesn't bite. He looks at me. Right. Usually, I say. Maddox Price looks at me. Steady. Unreadable. Nice to meet you, he says. 3 weeks ago he said, you're the most interesting person at this party and I've been watching you not talk to anyone for 20 minutes. Now he is shaking my hand like we are strangers. We are strangers. That's the deal. That was always the deal. His hand is warm, same as I remember. He lets go first. Cole is already moving toward the kitchen, calling something about food to Finn, and Maddox steps back to let me through the doorway, and for exactly 1 second we are close enough that I could say something. I don't. I walk past him. Behind me, very quietly, low enough that only I could possibly hear it, he says, small world. I keep walking. Tiny, I say. I don't look back. I make it to the kitchen, I take the chips from Finn, I sit on Cole's counter the way I've sat on it since I was 12 years old, and I listen to my brother and the man I slept with 3 weeks ago laugh at something on Cole's phone. I should have gotten his name. I had one job. One rule. Walk away clean. But here's the thing nobody tells you about rules, the ones you make for yourself are always the first ones you break. And just like that, The most careful mistake of my life walked straight into the one place I couldn't avoid him. Chapter 1. One Party Rule. Ren's POV. I have a system. It's not complicated. It doesn't need to be. The best systems never are, you keep them simple so you can't talk yourself out of them when things get difficult. Mine fits on a napkin. 3 rules, lived in order, no exceptions. 1. I do my work. 2. I stay out of Cole's world. 3. I don't date athletes. That's it. That's the whole thing. 3 years at Ashford University, and those 3 rules have kept me sane, kept me standing, and kept me from becoming the thing I swore I'd never be. My brother's footnote. Cole Calloway is not a bad person. I want to be clear about that before I say anything else. He is genuinely one of the best people I know, and I know that the way you only know things about people you grew up with, not because they showed you their good side, but because you saw every other side too, and you still landed here. He is loyal and loud, and he would do anything for the people he loves. He is also the kind of person other people. Sadie knew exactly what she was doing. She watched me from the corner of my eye, not saying anything else, letting that single sentence do all the work. Cole was at an away game. The Huskies were in Vermont until Sunday. Which meant his apartment was empty, his teammates were either with him or scattered, and any party on Birch Street tonight would have exactly 0 hockey energy in it. It's not a hockey party, I said. Tyler's on the swim team. Who else is going? Normal people, Ren. Students. Human beings who exist outside the athletic bubble. She sat on the edge of my desk. 2 hours. You drink 1 drink, you talk to someone who isn't a source, and then you come home and write your 1,500 words. That's it. I looked at my screen. At the cursor blinking in the middle of a sentence about university budget allocations. I thought about the last party I'd been to. Sophomore year, September. Cole had brought me along to a team thing because I'd just gone through something he felt guilty about, and he was trying to help in the only way he knew how, by surrounding me with people and noise. I'd spent 3 hours standing next to a refrigerator watching people take shots and talk about hockey, and I'd gone home feeling more alone than I did before. That was the night I made the rules. 2 hours, I said. Sadie's face split into a grin. 2 hours. Get your coat. The party was on the 2nd floor of a house that smelled like old carpet and someone's attempt at cooking. The music was coming from a Bluetooth speaker someone had balanced on a kitchen cabinet, which told you everything you needed to know about the vibe. Not a rager. Just people. Sadie was absorbed within 4 minutes. She had that quality, same as Cole, now that I thought about it, where she walked into rooms and rooms rearranged themselves around her. I watched her get pulled into a conversation near the kitchen window and felt 0 resentment about it because that was just Sadie, and I had spent 3 years learning to be comfortable on my own at things like this. I got a drink. Red cup, something that smelled like fruit and regret. I held it and moved through the room the way I always move through rooms, with purpose, like I was heading somewhere specific, so nobody stopped me to ask what I was doing standing alone. The main room was loud. The kitchen was louder. There was a back hallway that led toward a staircase, and it was darker and quieter, and I drifted toward it without meaning to, the way you always drift toward quiet when the noise gets too much. The corner at the bottom of the back stairs was a good spot. Low traffic. A small window that looked out at the backyard. I leaned against the wall and checked my phone, a reflex, not because I had anything to check, and let the noise of the party become background instead of main event. I'd been there maybe 4 minutes when I realized I wasn't alone. The guy was sitting on the bottom step. Phone in his hand, back against the wall, long legs stretched out in front of him. Dark hair. Gray hoodie. He wasn't hiding, exactly, more like he had claimed the space quietly and was waiting to see if anyone noticed. He noticed me. He looked up from his phone, took me in, one quick, calm read, no performance in it, and then he moved. Shifted over on the step without a word, without making it weird, without even fully looking at me again. Just created space, the way you move over on a park bench when someone needs to sit. Like he already knew I'd need it. I stood there for a second. He went back to his phone. I sat down. Chapter 2. The Stranger Hypothesis. Ren's POV. He didn't say anything first. Neither did I. That was already different. Most people, when a stranger sits next to them at a party, feel the need to fill the silence immediately. Hey, how do you know Tyler, Wild Knight, what's your major? The usual small talk machinery that everyone pretends to hate and everyone uses anyway because silence with a stranger is uncomfortable. He didn't seem uncomfortable. Neither was I, which was the part that surprised me. We sat there for maybe 3 full minutes, the party noise drifting from the other end of the house, and I watched the backyard through the window and he looked at his phone and no one said anything. It wasn't awkward. It was just quiet. Then he said, without looking up, "You've had the same drink for a while." I looked at my cup. He was right. I'm pacing myself. From what? From that. I nodded toward the main room. He glanced up then, toward the noise, then back at his phone. Fair. That was it for another minute. Then, you don't want to be here. I don't not want to be here. That's 2 negatives. I'm aware. He looked at me properly for the first time. He had one of those faces that was hard to read on first pass, not blank, just contained, like someone who decided a long time ago that their face was their own business. But there was something in the corners of it. Not quite a smile. Like the idea of one. So you want to be here, he said, but you'd rather be somewhere else. I'd rather be doing something useful, I said. But apparently I need to leave my room sometimes. Medical advice. Or close to it. Who prescribed this party? My roommate. She's somewhere near the kitchen window having the time of her life. He looked in that direction. And you ended up in the hallway. I ended up in the hallway, I agreed. He nodded slowly, like this was all perfectly reasonable. I ended up in the hallway because the guy whose party this is told me it was going to be small. He paused. This is not small. What counts as small to you? 6 people. Maybe 8. This is like 60. I know, he said. I've been here for 40 minutes and I've spent 35 of them in this exact spot. I almost smiled. I stopped it in time, but barely. That's impressive commitment to avoidance. I have a gift, he said, completely flat. This time I actually smiled. I felt it before I could do anything about it. We didn't exchange names. That part happened the way it sometimes does, the window for introducing yourself passes in the first 30 seconds, and after that it feels strange to backtrack, like admitting you should have done it already. He didn't offer his. I didn't offer mine. It became a thing without either of us deciding it was a thing. What we did instead was talk. About the party, first. Then about the house. He'd noticed the bad carpet smell too, clocked it immediately, which made me think he was the kind of person who noticed things. Then about the music, which transitioned from decent to deeply questionable around midnight, and he had opinions about it that were specific and a little cutting, and I had opinions that were worse, and somewhere in there the conversation stopped being 2 strangers at a party and started being something else. He was funny. Not performatively funny, not the kind of guy who was working for laughs, setting up jokes, watching for your reaction. He said dry, specific things and then moved on without waiting to see if they landed, which somehow made them land harder. You had to be paying attention or you'd miss it entirely. I was paying attention. And apparently, so was he. You said something useful, he said, about an hour in. We'd moved from the stairs to a corner near the back door without planning to, just migrated naturally when someone needed the staircase. What would useful look like tonight, if you weren't here? I have a piece due Friday, I said. About the university cutting funding to 3 student programs while building a new facility for the business department. Are they wrong to cut the programs? Depends who you ask. If you ask the administration, it's strategic resource allocation. If you ask the 200 students who use those programs, it's not that. Not that, I agreed. He was quiet for a second. Do you always do that? Land on the thing before you say it. Do what? Answer the official version first and then correct it. I looked at him. Do I? Twice now. You said, I don't not want to be here, instead of yes. And just now you gave the administration answer before the real one. He wasn't accusing me of anything. Just noting it, like a fact. You're good at both versions. You just like the real one better. Nobody had ever said that to me before. Not like that. Not as an observation rather than a complaint. I'm a journalist, I said. Yeah, he said. I figured. How? He thought about it. You've been watching the room all night. Not because you're anxious, because you're clocking things. Every time someone does something interesting you look at them for an extra second. A pause. Also you argued about the music using actual genre terminology. That felt like someone who writes things for a living. I stared at him. He looked perfectly calm. You noticed all of that, I said. I told you, he said. I've been in this corner for a while. We ended up on the back porch steps. I don't remember who suggested it, maybe neither of us did, and we just ended up there the way you end up places when you've stopped being careful about where you're going. It was cold out. October in upstate New York does not suggest otherwise. I had my jacket and he didn't, and I didn't offer to share it and he didn't ask, and we sat on the top step and the noise of the party was muffled behind us and the backyard was dark and empty. We'd been talking for almost 2 hours. You never told me your name, he said. You never told me yours. He looked at me sideways. In the light from the kitchen window his face was easier to read, or maybe I'd been studying it long enough that I knew where to look. Does it matter, he said. I thought about it. The honest answer was no. We were two people who'd found the same corner at the same party and talked for 2 hours about nothing personal, and it had been the best conversation I'd had in months, and names would make it specific in a way that felt unnecessary. Not really, I said. He nodded. Like that was the right answer. The back door opened and a group of people spilled out past us, loud, heading into the yard with their drinks. We moved together automatically to let them through, closer than we'd been all night, his shoulder against mine, and the group moved past and we didn't move apart. We sat there like that. Shoulder to shoulder. Not making anything of it. Then he said, quietly, I don't usually do this. Do what? Stay. He looked at the yard. At things like this. I usually leave early. What made you stay tonight? He didn't answer for a second. Then, you sat down. I looked at him. He was already looking at me. I'm not going to explain what happened next in real time. There is no version of doing that which doesn't make me sound like a different person than I am, and I need you to understand that I am a careful person. A person with a system. A person who has 3 rules specifically to prevent this kind of thing. What I'll tell you is this: we went inside. The party had thinned to maybe 20 people. The music was slower, someone had switched the playlist, and we ended up at the end of the hallway where a door stood halfway open and he stopped outside it and looked at me with that face I'd been reading all night, and I made a choice. That's all it was. A choice. 2 adults, a closed door, an October night in which my brother was in Vermont and I had no system and no rules that I was willing to follow. I woke up at 6:15. The room was gray with early light. He was asleep on his side facing away from me, one arm under the pillow, completely still in the particular way of someone who sleeps without dreaming. I lay there for exactly 60 seconds, looking at the ceiling, doing the math on what I was going to feel about this. Here is what I felt: warm. Certain. Like I'd opened a window in a room that had been closed too long, and the air coming through was cold and real and exactly what I needed even though I hadn't known I needed it. Here is what I did about it: I got dressed. Quietly, efficiently, with the particular skill of someone who has learned to do things without making them significant. I found my jacket on the floor. My shoes were by the door. I left. The walk home was 20 minutes through streets that were empty and pale in the early morning gray. I kept my hands in my pockets and thought about my article and the 1,500 words I owed Barbara on Friday and the library shift I had at 11. I thought about the back porch steps and the way he'd said you sat down like it was the most natural thing in the world. I told myself, I don't feel bad about this. I reached the end of my block. I told myself again, I don't feel bad about this. I got to my building and took the stairs and stood outside my door with my key in my hand. I don't feel bad about this. I went inside. Sadie was asleep, sprawled across her bed with her shoes still on, fully dressed. I sat on the edge of my own bed. I had never gotten his name. Somewhere across the city in a house on Birch Street, a guy I'd talked to for 2 hours and then made a very deliberate choice about was probably still asleep, and he had no name for me either, and we were even. Clean. Finished. I lay down. Stared at the ceiling. I told myself that 3 times on the walk home. Guilt is funny like that. Chapter 3. New Blood. Maddox's POV. I've been the new guy before. You'd think it gets easier. It doesn't. The specific discomfort of walking into a locker room where every face already knows every other face, where there are jokes you don't have the history for and silences you can't read yet, that doesn't change no matter how many times you do it. You just get better at looking like it doesn't bother you. I'm very good at looking like things don't bother me. Ashford's locker room was bigger than Michigan State's. Newer too, the kind of facility that told you money was coming in and the program knew what to do with it. Clean floors, good lighting, individual cubbies with nameplates already printed and mounted. I found mine, Price, M, third from the left on the back wall, and stood in front of it for a moment before I started unpacking my gear bag. Coach Daniels had done the formal part in his office. 45 minutes of program expectations, academic requirements, practice schedule, film sessions. He was direct and fair and exactly what I'd been told he was, a coach who ran a tight operation without running the people in it into the ground. I'd taken the meeting seriously. I take everything seriously, which is either a strength or a problem depending on who you ask. After coach, it was the captain's turn. Cole Calloway was exactly what I expected. I'd done my research, every serious transfer does, and what the research said was, team captain since sophomore year, alternate captain the year before that, the kind of player who made everyone around him better without making it obvious he was doing it. Top of the scoring charts last season. 3 years of zero drama with coaches, teammates, or administration. The research didn't cover the handshake, which was firm and direct, or the way he looked at you when he talked, straight at you, not past you. He showed me the locker, talked me through the non-official version of the schedule, told me which professors were worth talking to and which dining hall stations ran out of food by 7. He was easy to like. That was the problem, in a way, people who are easy to like right out of the gate make you want to trust them, and I had learned to be slow with trust. One more thing, Cole said. He said it casually, but I'd been reading rooms long enough to know when someone had been waiting to get to something. My sister goes to school here. I waited. Journalism major. She's around campus, she's around the program sometimes because she writes for the paper. He was still smiling but the smile had stopped moving. You don't need to know more than that. I'd had versions of this conversation before. Not often, I wasn't the kind of person who collected this kind of warning, but enough to know what was behind it. This wasn't a threat. It was a door, closed and locked, with a very clear sign on it. I shook his hand again. Not a problem, I said. He nodded. The smile got real again. I meant it. I had enough complications. I didn't need Cole Calloway's sister adding to the list. The first week was about learning things. The ice, first. Every rink has its own personality, the way the surface holds, the boards give, the sight lines from different positions. Ashford's arena was fast, which suited me. I'm a center who plays like a winger thinks, always angled toward the net, always looking for the pass that opens up 2 seconds before it's there. Michigan State's ice had been slower. This felt like coming home to something I hadn't known I was missing. The team, second. Reeves was on my line, a left winger who talked constantly and played like he had nothing to lose, which in my experience means either someone is reckless or someone is very good. Reeves was very good. He introduced himself by skating a full lap around me on day 1 and saying, "You're bigger than I expected." That's good. Brannigan hits like a truck. I didn't ask who Brannigan was. I found out in the first full contact practice, the defenseman from the opposing line who came at me like a test and found out I didn't fail tests. Cole, third. He was the kind of captain who pushed without pushing, which is harder than it sounds. He had opinions about play structure that matched mine closely enough to be useful and differed enough to be interesting. By the end of the first week he was finishing my sentences during film sessions, which either meant I was predictable or we thought the same way. I was leaning toward the latter. I kept my head down. I did my work. I stayed in my lane. The complications I already had were enough. Michigan State was not a thing I talked about. I'm saying that now because it matters, because it was the thing sitting under every conversation in that first week, a weight I'd gotten so used to carrying that I'd stopped noticing how heavy it was. The official story, the one on record, was that I'd requested a transfer for personal reasons and the program had agreed it was in everyone's best interest. Clean. Simple. The real story was Messier, and it lived in my chest like a splinter I hadn't been able to get to, and I'd made a decision on the drive from Michigan to New York that Ashford was a clean page. No history. No weight. Just the ice and the work and 3 years to build something that was worth the cost of everything I'd walked away from. I wasn't running. I want to be clear about that. I was choosing differently. There's a distinction. It was the end of my first week. Thursday, late afternoon, the practice facility empty. I needed to register for 2 communications credits, mandatory for all transfer students, and the office that handled it was in the journalism building on the east side of campus, which was the one building I hadn't been to yet. The journalism building was older than the facilities on the sports side. All dark wood boards and bulletin boards and the smell of printer ink that never fully left. I found the main hallway, checked the directory for the communications office, and took the right turn toward the back corridor. I almost walked straight into her. She was standing at a large corkboard on the wall, back to me, completely absorbed. She had a red pen in her mouth, not using it, just holding it there the way people hold things when they're thinking, and she was reading something pinned to the board, her head tilted slightly to the left, one hand braced on the wall beside the board. She hadn't heard me come around the corner. I stopped. My brain did the recognition thing in under a second. The back porch. The corner by the stairs. 2 hours of conversation about everything except names, and then the specific quality of the silence that had come after. I knew exactly who she was. My chest did something inconvenient. A pull, quick and low, that I had no business feeling in a hallway on a Thursday afternoon looking at a girl who was holding a red pen and didn't know I was there. She shifted her weight, reached up, and pulled a page off the board. Flipped it. Read the back. Put the pen to it without taking it out of her mouth first, moving it from teeth to fingers in one absent motion, and made a correction in the margin. She was completely, utterly unaware of me. And then the quiet part of my brain, the part that had been doing inventory since the first day, cataloging everything about this new place, mapping every variable, supplied the information I'd been avoiding since Cole said it. My sister goes to school here. Cole Calloway's sister. I stood in the hallway. She kept reading. The pen went back to her mouth. She pulled a second page off the board. Not a problem, I had said. I had meant it. I looked at her for one more second, 2 at most, and then I turned around, went back the way I came, and found another corridor that I hoped would loop around to the communications office by a different route. The splinter in my chest was doing something new. Something that felt less like Michigan State and more like a problem of an entirely different kind. Cole Calloway's sister, I thought again, like saying it twice would make it settle. It didn't settle. That was the problem. Chapter 4. Off the record. Ren's POV. The assignment sheet landed on my desk on a Monday morning and I knew before I finished reading it that I was in trouble. Hockey Team Profile Series, Transfer Student Impact Feature. 4 interviews minimum. First draft due in 3 weeks. Byline, Calloway. Barbara dropped it in front of me with her Monday coffee in hand and her expression that meant the conversation was already over. Good assignment for you, she said. You know the program better than anyone else on staff. I know the program from the outside, I said. I've never actually. That's the point. She was already walking back to her office. Fresh eyes, familiar world. That's the piece. I sat with the assignment sheet for a long time after she left. Here is the thing I did not say to Barbara, because Barbara did not need to know this, because nobody needed to know this, there was a transfer on the hockey team. One, specifically. The one whose name I did not have 3 weeks ago and whose name I now knew the way you know a bruise, by finding it accidentally and pressing harder than you meant to. Maddox Price. I had looked him up. Of course I had looked him up. I'm a journalist, looking things up is not something I can turn off. He had a Michigan State athletics page that listed his stats, a brief bio with no personal information, and a transfer announcement from 2 weeks ago that said nothing except that both parties wished each other well. I'd read it 3 times and gotten nothing useful out of it, which told me the useful parts were being deliberately kept elsewhere. I'd closed the tab. I'd opened it again. I'd closed it for good. I had also, in the privacy of my own head and with zero intention of admitting it to anyone, replayed 3 separate moments from that back porch conversation before I caught myself doing it and stopped. The assignment sheet sat on my desk. Fresh eyes, familiar world. I was a professional. I had done harder things than this. I had interviewed the provost about financial mismanagement while he smiled at me like I was 12. I had sat across from the athletics director and asked him why 3 black athletes' scholarship renewals had been delayed 6 months longer than everyone else's, and I had held his gaze through the whole non-answer. I could interview a hockey player I had made a deliberate choice about 3 weeks ago. One time. Briefly. I told myself that while I typed the interview request email. I told myself that while I scheduled the room. I absolutely did not tell myself that for the 3 days between the scheduling and the morning of, during which I managed to be extremely productive and not think about it at all and only checked the interview time on my phone maybe 9 times total. The first interview was with Reeves. I picked him because he was listed as Maddox's line partner, and I figured starting with the surrounding context before the subject was solid journalism practice. I was not avoiding Maddox Price. I was being methodical. Reeves was a gift. He sat across from me in the media room with his feet on the chair next to him and a protein bar he kept eating between questions, and he talked constantly, which meant I barely had to ask anything. He covered the team dynamics, the coaching style, the transition from last season, his personal stats ambitions, and 2 stories about road trips that I couldn't print but thoroughly enjoyed. I had maybe 12 usable quotes in 20 minutes. "You want the real story though," Reeves said, around the 15-minute mark. He said it like it was obvious. I looked up from my notes. "What do you mean?" "The transfer feature. The impact piece." He tilted his protein bar at me. "You want Price?" I kept my expression exactly where it was. "I'm interviewing all the transfer students." "Sure, but Coach literally said in the presser last week that Price was the missing piece." That's a direct quote. "Price is the story." He leaned back. "Also, he never talks to press, so if you can get him to actually say something real, that's your piece right there." He agreed to the interview. Getting him to agree is different from getting him to say anything. Reeves grinned. "Good luck. He's not exactly, you know, open." I wrote "not open" in my notes and circled it. 5 minutes later, Maddox walked in. I heard the door first. Then I heard Reeves say, "Price, hey, we just finished," and then I looked up from my notes and Maddox was standing in the doorway of the media room in practice gear with a bag over one shoulder and he was looking at me. He stopped. Not dramatically. Just stopped. A single still second before he kept moving. "You're Cole's sister," he said. Not a question. The voice was exactly what I remembered, even and unhurried, like someone who chose every word on purpose. "You're the transfer," I said. Not an answer. "I know that." I heard myself do it. Reeves looked between us with an expression I didn't have the capacity to deal with right now. "Do you guys, have you met?" "No," I said. At the same time, Maddox said nothing. Reeves nodded slowly. "Cool. Ren Calloway, Maddox Price." "Price, she's with the paper. You've got the interview scheduled." He grabbed his bag from the corner chair. "I'll leave you to it." The door closed behind him. We were alone in a small room with a table between us and 3 weeks of not thinking about it pressing on every available surface. I uncapped my pen. "You can sit," I said. He sat. He put his bag on the floor next to the chair, folded his hands on the table, and looked at me with that contained, unreadable face that I recognized now, not as blankness but as deliberate calm. Something held behind glass. "Do you want water?" I said. "I'm fine." "Okay." I clicked my recorder on. "I'm going to record this if that's all right." "Just for accuracy." "That's fine." "And you can go off the record at any point, just say so." Something crossed his face too quickly to catch. "Got it." I looked at my questions. Professional. Methodical. I was a journalist doing a journalism job, and the person across from me was a source, and that was the entire, complete story. So, I said, "How's the transition been, going from Michigan State to Ashford?" He was careful. Not unfriendly, careful. Every answer was considered before it came out, shaped into exactly what he wanted to say and nothing more. He talked about the ice, about the team structure, about the difference in the coaching approach. He gave me enough to work with. Not enough to surprise me. I asked about his stats. He talked about stats. I asked about Reeves as a line partner. He said, "Reeves is good. He sees the play before it develops." Specific, which I appreciated. I asked about his adjustment to a new campus. He said it was fine. I wrote everything down. I asked the next question. He answered it. This was going absolutely normally. Then I hit the end of my prepared questions and I heard myself say, "Why'd you really transfer?" He went still. Not visibly, nothing you'd catch if you weren't watching closely. But something behind the glass shifted. Rearranged itself. "Off the record," I said, though I hadn't planned to offer that. "A beat." "On the record," he said. I waited. Michigan State wasn't the right fit. "That's the official answer," I said. "That's the answer." I looked at him. He looked back. Something passed between us that had nothing to do with the interview, a recognition of the same kind of person on the other side of the table. Someone who knew how to hold a line. I wrote it down. I watched him watch me write it down. His jaw moved, just slightly. "Is that it?" he said. "That's it," I said. He nodded. He reached down for his bag, stood, and for a second I thought of something else I should ask. I always do, the question that comes too late, and didn't say it. "I'll send you the draft before it runs," I said. "Standard practice." "You don't have to." "I want to." Professional. Normal. This was all completely normal. "Thanks for your time." He nodded again. Picked up his phone from the table, and I saw it, not because I was trying to, not because I was looking for it, but because it was right there and his screen lit up as he lifted it. The contact name, Cole. The message preview, visible for 2 seconds before his hand covered the screen, "My place tonight. Ren's working late, she won't be there." He pocketed his phone. "See you around," he said. "Yeah," I said. He left. I sat in the empty media room with my recorder still running and the assignment sheet on the table in front of me, and I looked at my own name in Barbara's handwriting, byline, Callaway, and thought about Cole texting Maddox Price, and the ease of it, the shorthand of it. She won't be there. My brother scheduling his friendships around my absence like it was the most natural thing in the world. Which meant they were close enough for that already. Which meant this was real. The friendship was real. Which meant. I stopped that thought. I turned off my recorder. I looked at my notes. Maddox Price, transfer, center. Below it, in my own handwriting, Michigan State wasn't the right fit. And below that, circled, from my conversation with Reeves, not open. I stared at my notes for a long time. His name looked different written down than it did in my head. More permanent. More real. I should have gotten his name 3 weeks ago. I got it today. Somehow that was worse. Chapter 5. The interview. Dual POV. Ren. I lied about one thing in that media room. When I said that's it, when he asked if that was all my questions, there were 3 more on my sheet. Sit with that. I cut an interview short because I needed him out of that room before the professional version of me ran out of conversation to hide behind. That was Monday. By Wednesday I had 800 words that were technically competent and completely hollow, and I knew it the way you know when food has no taste, you're chewing, you're going through the motions, but there's nothing there. Barbara was going to read this and know I'd phoned it in. Barbara knew everything. I needed more from the interview. I needed to go back. I booked the room again for Thursday, sent Maddox a 2-line email, additional questions for the profile. 20 minutes if you can. And told myself this was journalism, just journalism, and the fact that I'd thought about that interview every day since Monday was a quality control concern and nothing else. He replied in under an hour. Fine. Thursday. No punctuation. No sign-off. Just the agreement and the day. I read it 4 times. Thursday. Same room. Same table. Same recorder. I was there first, I'm always early, another one of my systems, and I had my notes spread out and my questions ordered, and I was a picture of professional readiness when he came in. He was in a gray t-shirt this time. Not practice gear. He must have come from somewhere that wasn't the rink, which meant he'd scheduled this around something else. I did not think about that. Thanks for coming back, I said. You said 20 minutes, he said, and sat. 20 minutes, I confirmed. I clicked the recorder on. I looked at my first question. And then I didn't ask it. I don't know why. I've thought about this since, trying to trace the exact moment when I decided to throw out the prepared version and say the thing that was actually on my mind. It wasn't impulsive, I'm not impulsive, but it wasn't calculated either. It was somewhere in the middle. Like a door I walked through before I noticed it was open. Off the record, I said. He looked at me. Completely off. Nothing written, nothing used. A pause. He leaned back slightly. Okay. Why did you really transfer? He was quiet for 5 seconds. Not uncomfortable quiet, thinking quiet. The kind that means someone is deciding something. That question was on the record Monday, he said. This is the real version, I said. I already have the official answer. I don't need it twice. Something in his face shifted. Not much, a small adjustment in the area around his eyes, a loosening of something that had been held tight. He looked at the table. Then at me. What makes you think there's a real version? Because Michigan State wasn't the right fit is the same answer every transfer student gives. It's the version you use when the real one isn't something you want on record. I kept my voice level. I'm not asking you to go on record. I'm asking because I want to understand what I'm writing about. You're writing about the hockey team. I'm writing about you. He looked at me for a long moment. There were things happening at Michigan State that I wasn't willing to be part of, he said finally. I reported what I saw to the people I was supposed to report it to. It didn't go the way it should have. A pause. So I left. I didn't write it down. I'd promised. What kind of things? The kind that get buried when the program is good enough that nobody wants to look. The room was very quiet. The recorder sat between us, switched off, not catching any of this. That's a bigger story than a transfer profile, I said. Yes, he said. Is it a story you want told? He looked at his hands. Not yet, he said. Not like this. I nodded. I understood not yet. I'd been sitting on 2 other stories this semester waiting for the right time. You don't break something before it's ready just because you have it. That's how you lose sources and ruin cases and burn the whole thing down before it can do any good. Okay, I said. He looked at me. Surprised, I think, though it was hard to tell with him. Just okay. Just okay. You said not yet. I'm not going to push. I picked up my pen. Back on the record. Something happened in his expression. A small thing, fast and then gone. I filed it away. Back on the record, he said. Maddox. She surprised me. I don't say that easily. I've been reading rooms since I was 12 years old, I had to, growing up the way I did, in a house where you needed to know the temperature of a room before you stepped into it. I got good at it. Good enough that surprises became rare. People are mostly who they look like. She kept not being who she looked like. Monday she'd been all sharp professional edges, clipboard posture, organized questions, the kind of recorder click efficiency that tells you someone takes their work seriously. I'd given her exactly what I give every journalist, which is the version that satisfies the question without opening anything up. I was good at that too. Then she came back. I had looked her up between Monday and Thursday. I want to say I didn't, but honesty costs nothing when no one else is listening. I'd found her column, The Uncomfortable Question, and read 4 pieces before I caught myself doing it and stopped. She was good. Better than good. She wrote the way she talked, directly, without softening the edges, with a particular attention to the thing nobody was saying out loud. The Provost piece had been the best student journalism I'd read since college started. She also shared a father with Cole, and that was the wall. I'd been clear with myself about the wall since the hallway in the journalism building. Whatever had happened at that party was a closed door. People made choices at parties and then life continued, and the specific cruelty of this situation was that life had continued directly into a locker room with her brother in it. I couldn't undo the party. I could absolutely not make it worse. Not a problem, I had told Cole. Sitting across from her in that media room for the second time, I thought, I meant that. I still meant it. And then she went off the record and asked me the real question. Here is the thing about someone asking you the right question with the right face, it gets past the wall before you can check it. I don't know how she knew it was a real version and not an official version. She'd known me for a total of maybe 40 minutes, if you counted Thursday and didn't count the party, which I was counting as nothing. But she looked at me like she already understood there was a difference between the two, and she wasn't asking for the official one because she already had it, and the intelligence of that, the specific accuracy of it, made me answer. Not everything. Not the parts that could hurt people. But the shape of it. She listened the way people with notepads usually can't, actually listened, not organizing it for later, not halfway writing the next question. Just present. Watching. When she said okay, I waited for the follow-up. There's always a follow-up. Journalists don't leave pressure points alone, it's practically in the job description. But she just nodded and said okay and meant it. She would wait. She'd said not yet back to me like it was a language she already spoke. I didn't know what to do with that. We went back on the record. She asked me 3 more questions, better ones than Monday, specific, a few of them actually interesting, and I answered them properly this time. Not just technically. Actually. She turned the recorder off. Clicked her pen closed. Stacked her notes. That was better, she said. Then what? Then Monday. She said it without any heat. Just factual. You actually answered things this time. You asked better questions. She looked up at that. Something quick moved across her face, not offended, more like she was recalculating something. She nodded once, like she was filing it away. She stood. I stood. The table was between us and the room was small, and this was the second time I'd been in a small space with her, and the distance was doing the same thing it had done on the back porch, feeling shorter than it actually was. I picked up my phone. The screen lit up. Cole's name at the top. My place tonight. Wren's working late, she won't be there. I turned it face down. A reflex. 1 second too late. I looked up. She was looking at the middle distance, not at my phone, not quite at me. Her expression had shifted. Something had come and gone in it too fast to catch, but whatever it was had landed. I could see it in the set of her jaw. The slight adjustment in how she was holding herself. She'd seen the screen. She didn't say anything about it. She picked up her bag. I'll have the draft to you by Tuesday, she said. You don't have to. I know. She moved toward the door. I want to get it right. She left. I stood in the empty media room and held my phone and thought about Cole texting me while his sister sat 3 feet away, and the look that had crossed her face, not hurt, not angry, something quieter than both. The look of someone who was used to being the person who wasn't there. She won't be there. 4 words. Cole hadn't meant anything by them. He never did. I wasn't sure she saw it that way. I put my phone in my pocket and picked up my bag and thought, not a problem. I thought it carefully and specifically, the way you think things you're trying to make true. It didn't help the way it had before. Chapter 6. Roommate Rules. Wren's POV. I lasted 4 days. 4 days of carrying the whole thing around in my chest like a stone I'd swallowed, going to class and doing my work and eating meals and having normal conversations with normal people, all while this specific, terrible piece of information sat behind my sternum pressing outward. The party. The stranger. The back porch and the closed door in the morning after. And then the hallway at Cole's apartment, and the handshake, and nice to meet you said with a face that gave nothing away, and my brother standing between us with absolutely no idea. 4 days. That's how long I held it alone. Then I came home on a Tuesday night to find Sadie eating cereal on her bed at 9:30 p.m. watching a reality show with the captions on because she claimed it helped her process dialogue faster, which was absolutely not a real thing, and she looked at me once and said, "Okay, what happened?" Not a question. Sadie has never asked me a question when she already knows the shape of the answer. I sat on my bed. I looked at the ceiling. And I told her everything. She didn't interrupt. That was the first surprise. Sadie interrupted everything. It was practically her primary mode of communication, the running commentary, the interjections, the wait, back up, say that again. But she sat with her cereal going soft in the bowl and she listened to the whole thing from the party to the journalism building hallway to the media room to Cole's text on Maddox's screen, and she didn't say a word. When I finished, the room was quiet for about 3 seconds. Then, "Okay, but have you considered," Sadie said, "what if it's fate?" I threw a pillow at her. She caught it, which was unfair. "I'm being serious." She nodded slowly, like that word had confirmed something. Like he knew he had to. "Yes," I said, before I could stop myself. Sadie looked at me for a moment. Not triumphantly, she wasn't that kind of person, the kind who collected "I told you so's." She just looked at me with that particular expression she had when she was about to say the thing I needed to hear and wasn't going to like. "You could just tell Cole," she said. "Before this gets complicated." I considered it. I actually considered it, which was more than I would have done a year ago. I sat on the edge of my bed and I ran the conversation in my head, Cole's kitchen, me across from him, the words in some reasonable order, and I tried to imagine what his face would do. Here is what I know about my brother's face. It tells the truth about 5 seconds before his mouth does. I've been reading it since we were kids. I know the difference between the face that means he's annoyed and the face that means he's genuinely hurt. I know the face he makes when he's proud of me. It's quieter than you'd expect, more contained, like he's trying not to make it a big deal even when it is. I know the face he gets when someone messes with something he loves. I thought about that last one. Then I thought about freshman year, first week. Cole had come to my dorm to help me set up boxes and a badly assembled shelf and 2 hours of him being more useful than I wanted him to be, and on his way out he'd stopped in the doorway and said, in a voice that was trying to be casual and wasn't quite making it, "Hey. I know you want to do your own thing here. I get that. Just, my world and your world, keep them separate. Don't make me choose between my team and you." I had been 19 years old. I had just moved into a new room in a new city. And my brother, who loved me more than most people love anything, had looked me in the eye and asked me, without quite saying it, to make myself easy to manage. I'd said okay. I had meant it. At the time I had meant it completely, because I understood what he was asking and I understood why, and I loved him too, and making things easy for the people I loved was something I was very practiced at. I had kept that promise for 2 years. I had never, once, made him choose. Because I knew, I had always known, even then, even at 19 with a shelf that wouldn't stay level, that choosing between his team and me wasn't actually a choice he'd have to make out loud. The team was his life's work. I was just his sister. Those weren't equal weights and we both knew it and we had never once said it directly, which meant we had built a very functional relationship on a foundation we had both agreed to never look at too closely. 12 seconds. That's how long I sat with "You could just tell Cole." Then I thought about his face. The real one, underneath the captain face. The one that would look at me and recalculate everything, his friendship with Maddox, his locker room, his season, and I thought about what it would cost him, and what it would cost me, and the specific arithmetic of it that always came out the same way no matter how many times I ran it. I was not doing that. "I can't," I said. Sadie didn't argue. She just said, okay, the same way she said okay to everything that wasn't her decision, completely, without judgment, just accepting the answer. "It was one night," I said. "It's done. I'm his journalist now, professionally. That's the whole relationship. I can do that. I know you can. I'm a professional." "Ren." "What?" She looked at me carefully. "I'm not arguing. I'm just saying, professionally is a long time to hold a face." I have a good face, I said. She picked her cereal back up. You really do, she said. That's not the part I'm worried about. I lay awake for a while that night. Not about Maddox Price, I was done spending brain space on Maddox Price. I had made the decision, filed it, moved on. That was the system and the system worked. I lay awake thinking about the text on his phone. Wren's working late, she won't be there. The ease of it. Cole scheduling his life in the spaces I wasn't occupying, without thinking twice, the way you move furniture around a room you've already mentally organized. I didn't blame him. That was the thing, I couldn't even be angry about it, because he wasn't doing it to me, he was just doing it. I was a logistic. A calendar entry to schedule around. She won't be there. At some point I fell asleep. In the morning I had a journalism assignment, a library shift, and a system that was perfectly intact. I was a professional. It was one night. It was over. I told myself that once. Guilt is one thing. This was something else. Something that didn't have a name yet, which meant I wasn't going to give it one. Chapter 7. Line change. Maddox's POV. Game days have a sound. I don't mean the crowd, that's obvious, that comes later. I mean the earlier sound, the locker room sound, 4 hours before puck drop when the building is half empty and the ice crew is finishing their last pass and the fluorescent lights are doing their cold, flat thing above the benches. Gear being sorted. Tape being cut. The specific rhythm of 20 men getting ready to do the one thing they were built to do. That sound is the same everywhere. Michigan State. Ashford. Every rink I've played in since I was 9 years old. Whatever else changes, that sound stays. I pulled my pads on in the same order I always did. Left leg, right leg, chest, arms. Helmet last. I had done this so many times it happened without thought, which was the point. The ritual burned itself into the body until it became something separate from the mind. By the time the helmet was on, the mind was already somewhere else. Already on the ice. Already reading the play 2 seconds before it happened. Cole was 3 lockers down doing his own version of it. His was louder, more social, the captain's pregame that doubled as team temperature taking. He moved through the room, said the right things to the right people, read who needed a push and who needed to be left alone. He was good at it. Better than anyone I'd played under since juniors. You ready? He said, stopping at my locker. Yes. How's the shoulder? Fine. Reeves says you've been in early every morning this week. I like early. He looked at me with the particular expression I'd learned to recognize in 3 weeks of playing with him, half captain assessment, half something more personal. Like he was deciding whether to push. You don't have to prove anything today, he said. First home game. Just play your game. I know. I mean it. The guys already know what you are. I know, I said again. He clapped me once on the shoulder pad and moved on. I finished suiting up. I kept my head in the right place. I did not think about the email in my inbox from a campus email address I shouldn't have memorized. Draft attached for your review. W. Calloway. I'd read it twice. It was good, better than good, specific and clean and nothing like the profile I'd been expecting. She'd written me like I was a person with an interior rather than a stats sheet with quotes attached. She'd used the things I'd actually said instead of the things that sounded better. She'd left out everything I'd said off the record. I'd replied looks fine because I was not going to send the reply I'd actually written, which was 3 sentences longer and said things I had no business saying, and I'd deleted it and sent looks fine and moved on. That was the situation. Managed. Contained. I skated out for warm-ups. The arena was filling. Ashford hockey did numbers. I'd been told this, I hadn't fully understood it until I was on the ice looking up at 2,000 people in the lower bowl for a regular season home opener. The student section was a wall of blue and white. The press box was on the upper left, a glassed-in row of seats and a ledge for laptops and notebooks. I went through my warm-up. Edges, then speed, then shots. Focused. My mind on the ice. Then Reeves passed me the puck for a cross-ice relay and I caught it cleanly and cut toward the boards and looked up automatically, sightlines, habit, reading the space, and the press box was directly in my eye line. She was there. Third seat from the left. Notepad open, pen moving, not looking at the ice yet, looking at something she'd already written, reviewing it, the focused private expression she had when she was working. Camera on the ledge beside her. Dark jacket. Hair pulled back. I missed the pass back to Reeves. The puck went wide by 2 feet. Clean miss, nothing complicated, just a center who wasn't looking where he should have been looking. Reeves skated over, picked it up, and looked at me. Not with judgment, just the flat, noting look of someone who files information away. "You good?" he said. "Fine," I said. "Send it again." He did. I caught it and sent it back and kept moving. I did not look at the press box. I finished warm-ups. I went back to the bench. I went through the rest of the pregame. I kept my head where my head was supposed to be. I looked at the press box twice more before the puck dropped. The first time she was still writing. The second time she was looking at the ice with her camera raised, and I had exactly enough self-awareness to know that looking at someone who might be photographing you was a bad idea, so I looked away first and kept it away for the rest of the period. I played well. I know when I'm playing well the same way I know when I'm not. It's a physical thing, a current that's either running or it isn't, and tonight it was running. 2 assists in the first period, 1 in the third. The kind of game where the passes came early and the reads were right and nothing surprised me because I was already there before the play arrived. We won 4-1. The locker room after was the good noise, the release of it, men who had done the thing they were built to do, exhausted and satisfied. Cole was talking to coach in the corner. Reeves was telling a story to 3 people at once. I sat on my bench and worked off my pads in order and let the sound of it wash through the room. Cole found me on the way out. "Good game," he said. 2 assists and you won every puck battle in your zone. "Thanks." He fell into step beside me down the tunnel. "You seemed a little off in the second period though." I kept walking. "Did I? Missed an outlet pass you would normally make in your sleep." "Just one, but," he glanced at me. "You okay?" "First home game," I said. "Still getting used to the ice." He was quiet for a step. "Then, that's what I figured." He said it easily. Accepted it the same way he accepted most things I told him, at face value, without drilling down. I had noticed this about Cole in 3 weeks. He trusted people he liked, and when he liked you, he gave you the benefit of every doubt. It was a good quality. It was also, in this specific situation, a thing I was using without meaning to. He peeled off toward the coach's hallway. I kept walking. That night I sat in my apartment at my desk and had the draft email open and reread the line she'd written about me. "Price plays like someone who sees the game differently from everyone else on the ice, not faster, but earlier. Like he's watching a version of the play that hasn't happened yet." I stared at that sentence for longer than I should have. Then I closed the email and went to sleep. Chapter 8. Byline. Ren's POV. The piece ran on Thursday. 8:47 a.m., Ashford Courier website, my name under the headline. I knew it was good before Barbara confirmed it. I always know, the same way you know when something you cooked actually worked, some internal meter that measures the distance between what you meant and what ended up on the page. This one was close. Closer than most. New blood, same ice, how transfer Maddox Price is rewriting Ashford's offensive line. Barbara had changed the headline. My version had been more specific, hers was more clickable. I had a standing policy of not fighting Barbara on headlines. By noon, it had been shared 400 times on the university's athletics social pages. By 2, a regional sports blog had linked to it. By 4:30 I had 3 emails in my inbox from people I didn't know saying they'd read it, which had never happened to me before, not with a single piece, not this fast. I sat in the library stacks with my phone and read through the comments on the Courier site the way you do something you're not sure you should be doing, quickly, braced for something bad, stopping when the good ones landed. Honestly, the best profile piece the Courier has published in years. Finally, someone who writes about hockey like the players are actual people. Maddox Price is going to be a name people know. Nice to see it written down before everyone else figured it out. And then, about halfway down, the one that made me put my phone face down on the table for a solid 30 seconds. Who's the new girl who finally made Maddox Price sound like a human being? I picked my phone back up. I did not reread that comment. I closed the tab. My phone rang at 5 p.m. Cole's name on the screen. "Good piece," he said, as soon as I answered. "Thanks." I was still in the library. I kept my voice down. "I mean it. It was really good." A pause that had something moving in it, pride, maybe, the specific kind he had when I did something that surprised him even though it shouldn't have. "Price said you got him to actually say real things. I don't know how you did that. The guy doesn't talk to journalists." "He talked to me," I said. Carefully. "Yeah." Another pause. It's good. It's good for the program." He cleared his throat. "Stay professional though, yeah. These are my guys. I just want to make sure." "Cole. I know. You're always." "I'm always professional," I said. "That's the whole job." "Right." He exhaled. "Yeah. Good piece, Ren." "Really?" The words were right there. I don't know how to explain that except to say it was physical, a pressure at the base of my throat, the specific feeling of a sentence that wanted to come out. "Cole. There's something I should tell you. It's not a big deal. Or it is. I don't know. 3 weeks ago I went to a party and I met someone and I didn't ask his name, and then I walked into your hallway and he was standing there, and I've been sitting with it since because I don't know what to do with it and I'm tired of knowing things alone. That's what was there." "Thanks for calling," I said instead. "Of course." He sounded easier now, the professional concern filed away. "Finn's been reading your stuff too, by the way. He told me last week. He didn't want me to tell you because he's 17 and that would be embarrassing, but..." "Don't tell me that," I said, because if I thought about Finn reading my column I was going to feel something in the vicinity of my sternum that I didn't want to feel while I was already feeling several other things. "Absolutely don't tell me that. Too late." He was smiling. I could hear it. "Get some sleep. You look tired. You can't see me." "I know you," he said. "You're in the library at 5 p.m. after a piece ran. You're exhausted and you're reading the comments instead of eating dinner." I looked at my close tab. "Go eat," he said. "Good work." He hung up. I sat in the library for a while after. The stacks around me were quiet, that particular late afternoon library quiet that had always felt safe to me, all those books, all that ordered knowledge, everything in the right place. I had spent a lot of time in libraries. They had a logic to them. You could find what you needed if you understood the system. I was very good at systems. I thought about Cole's voice on the phone. "Stay professional though, yeah. These are my guys." 2 years ago he'd said don't make me choose. Today he'd said stay professional. Different words, same architecture. The structure underneath was always the same: here is where you belong, and here is where I need you to stay, and as long as you do that we can all pretend the boundary isn't a boundary at all. I wasn't angry. I want to be clear about that, I wasn't angry, not at Cole, not even at the situation. I understood it. I had built my whole life here around understanding it. I was something else. Something smaller and quieter than anger, something that had been sitting in the corner of my chest since freshman year and had gotten very patient waiting to be named. "Always am," I had said. The easiest 2 words in my vocabulary. I had said them so many times they had worn smooth. Always am, always will be, always fine, always professional, always exactly where you need me to be. I packed up my bag. I put my phone in my pocket. I went to find dinner. In the elevator down from the 4th floor I let myself think, for exactly the length of 1 floor, about a gray t-shirt and a sentence she'd written about a hockey player, like he's watching a version of the play that hasn't happened yet. She'd read him accurately. That was the part that stuck. The elevator opened. I walked out into the evening air and thought about nothing in particular. I thought, I'm good at this. Somewhere between the library and my building I stopped believing it. I got home. Locked the door. Sat on my bed. I stared at my ceiling for a long time and thought about how many times in 3 years I had said always am to my brother, and how easily it had come out tonight, and how I hadn't even hesitated. I wondered when I had gotten this good at lying to him. I wondered if it had always been this easy, and I just hadn't noticed because I'd never had a reason to look. Chapter 9. Thin Ice. Maddox's POV. I don't do things by accident. That's not arrogance, it's just how I'm built. I plan. I map things out. I think about the moves before I make them the way I think about plays before they happen, and that habit has served me well enough that I've made it a permanent feature of how I operate. Which is why what happened in the library on a Wednesday night bothered me more than it should have. I didn't plan for it. That was the whole problem. Study hall was mandatory for transfers first semester. That was in the fine print of the athletic agreement. All transfer students, regardless of GPA, attended 2 supervised sessions per week until the end of October. It was a policy designed, I assumed, for transfers who needed the structure. I didn't need the structure. I had kept a 3.4 throughout 3 years at Michigan State while playing full-season hockey, which required a level of organization that mandatory study hall was not going to improve. But it was mandatory. So I went. Wednesday sessions were in the library's second-floor quiet room, a long room with individual tables and low lighting and a graduate student monitor who sat at the front desk doing their own work and checked in every 20 minutes. 6 of us from the team were in the Wednesday group. I usually took the table in the back corner, the one with the best sightline to the door and the least foot traffic beside it. I had film work to review. Then a stats analysis due for my sports management course. Then reading for the communications credit I was halfway through. I had it mapped out, film first, then the analysis, then the reading if time allowed, and if not, the reading at home. 2 hours, productive, no wasted motion. I walked into the quiet room at 6:15, took my corner table, set up my laptop, put my earbuds in, and opened the film file. I did not notice, for the first 7 minutes, that someone was already at the table next to mine. She had her back to the door, which was why I'd missed her. I'd clocked the room from the entrance and registered the shapes of people without registering the people. She was facing the wall, hunched slightly forward, a highlighter in one hand and a printed article spread across the table in front of her. 3 more articles were stacked to her left, all with edges already marked in yellow. I noticed the highlighter first. Then the stack. Then the specific way she held her pen when she wasn't using it, in her fist, loosely, like she kept forgetting to put it down. I had seen that before. In the media room. Both times. I looked back at my screen. This was fine. This was a library. People used libraries. There was no reason for this to be anything except 2 people in a large room who happened to be sitting near each other. I put my eyes on the film and left them there. For 40 minutes neither of us said anything. I know it was 40 minutes because I watched the clock with the specific attention of someone who is actively not paying attention to something else. The film session went well. I made notes, flagged 2 sequences to show Reeves, clocked a defensive pattern in the upcoming opponent's zone play that I'd bring to Cole in the morning. Good 40 minutes. Productive. I was also aware, in the peripheral and completely involuntary way, of every small movement at the table beside me. The highlighter going down, the pen coming up. A page turning. The particular sound of someone exhaling quietly when they hit a section that requires more concentration. The moment she sat up straight and pressed her knuckles into the small of her back like she'd been bent over too long. I did not look at her directly once. I closed the film file and opened the stats analysis. I worked through the first section. I was 3 paragraphs into the second section when I heard the soft tap of something hitting the floor. I looked down before I thought about it. Her pen was on the floor between our tables. One of those pens with the cap had come off on impact, rolled a few inches toward my chair. She was already leaning sideways to reach for it, and I was already picking it up, and then we were both reaching for the same thing in the small space between the tables and her fingers landed on top of mine. Neither of us moved. It lasted 1 second. Maybe less. The kind of moment that doesn't have a real duration because time stops running properly inside it. Then she sat up slowly. I held the pen out. She took it. Her eyes were on the table when she said, very quietly, "This is complicated." I didn't look away from her. I know. Cole's my brother. I know that too. She turned the pen over in her fingers once. Twice. Then we're on the same page. Completely, I said. She nodded. Put the pen down on her notes. Looked at the printed article in front of her. I watched her eyes find her place on the page, and I watched her start reading again, and I watched her become, very deliberately, a person who was alone at a library table, which was what she had been before the pen fell. I turned back to my screen. I read the same paragraph of the stats analysis 4 times. The words were there. I could see them. Individually they were all words I knew: average, variance, zone entry, percentage. Put together in their actual sentence order they formed complete thoughts that had meaning. I understand this because I checked, slowly, more than once. I could not have told you what any of them said. She left at 8:15. I heard her packing up, the papers stacking, the zipper on her bag, the quiet scrape of a chair on a library floor. I kept my eyes on my screen. Her footsteps were soft going toward the door. Then they stopped. I waited. Your analysis, she said. Low voice, because it was a quiet room. The one in the second column. I looked up. She was 2 steps from the door, bag on her shoulder, not quite looking at me. She was pointing at my screen. The variance calculation, she said. The formula in B7. I think you've got the range wrong. It's pulling from D column instead of E. I looked at my spreadsheet. She was right. I looked back at her. She was already at the door. Thanks, I said. She nodded once, barely, and left. I fixed the formula. I finished the analysis. I packed up at 8:40 and walked back to my car in the dark and sat in the front seat for a while before I started the engine. Then we're on the same page. Completely. That was the agreement. 2 people, same page, no complications, no problem. I started my car and drove home and thought about 1 second in a library, a pen, a hand, the specific way time works wrong in certain moments, and I sat with the knowledge that I was a person who planned things and mapped things and did not do things by accident. And I had not once, in 40 minutes of active effort, managed to stop noticing she was there. Chapter 10. Breakaway. Ren's POV. I knew something was wrong the second Jordan smiled at me. Not because Jordan's smiles were always wrong, they weren't, or they hadn't been, not once in 2 years of being close enough that I had her contact saved under the emoji that meant good friend rather than just a name. But that was before she started dating my brother, and before the friendship started thinning at the edges the way things thin when one person's loyalty quietly shifts and the other person is the last to notice. I had noticed. I just hadn't said anything. That was a pattern with me apparently. The charity event was at the Student Union, the hockey team's annual November fundraiser, which this year had a photo booth and a raffle and a lot of people in Ashford Huskies gear standing around tables of baked goods. I was there professionally. Press credential, camera around my neck, a follow-up piece Barbara wanted on the team's community presence. Cole was behind a table signing jerseys. Reeves was eating his 3rd brownie and making no attempt to be subtle about it. I had been there 40 minutes and done my job and was reaching for a cup of water at the refreshment table when Jordan appeared beside me. Ren. Her voice was warm. Both hands wrapped around a coffee cup, the kind of posture that said I'm relaxed, I'm not doing anything, this is just 2 people at a table. I recognized that posture. I used it myself in interviews. Hey, I said. I've been meaning to catch you. She smiled. I saw your article. Which one? The transfer piece. She tilted her head. The price profile. It was really good. You interviewed him pretty thoroughly. That's the job, I said. He's cute, right, she said. Casually. A throwaway observation. I looked at her. I kept my expression where it was. He's a good interview subject. She made a small sound, not quite a laugh, not quite an agreement, something in between that gave away nothing. Cole says he's never had a teammate click this fast. Like, ever. He's really protective of him. She took a sip of her coffee. You know how Cole is about the people he lets in. There it was. Not a threat. Not anything you could point at and say this is the thing. It was wrapped in pleasantries, delivered with a smile, and sitting underneath all of it, under the warmth and the casual tone and the compliment on my writing, a very clear message. I'm watching. Cole's watching. Be careful. She knew I understood her. I could see it in the way she was looking at me, not confrontationally, but with a particular attention, measuring whether I was going to pretend I didn't get it. I didn't pretend. Cole's protective of all his people, I said. Me included. A beat. Something moved through her eyes, not surprise, not quite. Recognition. Of course, she said. She smiled again. Anyway. Good piece. Really. She touched my arm once, light, friendly, a perfectly normal goodbye, and walked back toward the main table where Cole was finishing a signature and looking up to find her. I watched him light up when he saw her. I put my water cup down. Sadie found me 10 minutes later near the photo booth, where I had been standing looking at my camera screen and not actually looking at my camera screen. Okay, she said, in the voice she used when something had happened that she needed to tell me immediately. Don't react. I looked at her. Her eyes were wide and doing the specific thing they did when she'd seen or heard something she hadn't been meant to. What? I said. I was in the hallway by the side entrance. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Coming in from the parking lot. Jordan was outside on her phone. I walked past and she didn't see me. Sadie. I heard her, Sadie said. I wasn't trying to. She was talking loud. She looked at me. She said, don't worry. If Ren doesn't back off, I'll tell Cole she was at that party. He'll handle it. The room kept going around us. People laughing, the photo booth flashing, Reeves starting on what appeared to be a fourth brownie. Cole's voice somewhere behind me, easy and warm, talking to a donor. I stood very still. She said, back off, I said. Those exact words. Back off from what? Sadie looked at me carefully. That's the part one keep turning over. I thought about Jordan at the refreshment table. The smile. He's cute, right? The specific way she delivered the message, not like someone who knew for certain, but like someone who was testing whether a reaction would confirm something. She didn't know. Not yet, not for sure. If she knew, she wouldn't be testing. She'd be telling. What she had was something. A piece of something. Enough to be watching. She said, back off, I said again, quieter. Not stay away from the team or stay professional. Back off. I looked at Sadie. That's not about the article. No, Sadie agreed. It's not. She thinks something is happening. Or she knows something happened. I looked across the room at Jordan, who was now standing beside Cole with her hand on his arm, laughing at something the man to his left had said. She looked completely relaxed. She looked like someone who had just made a point and was waiting to see if it had been received. She glanced up and met my eyes for exactly 1 second. Then she looked back at Cole. Here is the thing that should have been the question: how do I handle this? That was the obvious question. The tactical one. The one a careful person with a good system would have gone home and sat down and mapped out with her roommate over tea and a reasonable plan. Instead, the question that sat in my chest the whole drive home, that I turned over in my hands like something with an unfamiliar shape, was this: what does Jordan know, and why does she care? Not about me. Not about me and a stranger at a party. That wasn't big enough to warrant a threat. Jordan Page had a $1,000 camera and a campus influencer account with 12,000 followers and a boyfriend who was the most visible person in the athletic program. She had enough social capital to last the rest of her college career without lifting a finger. She didn't need to threaten me. So why threaten me? What was she protecting? And why did it matter enough that she'd risk Cole finding out she'd done it? Because if I told him, and I could tell him, his opinion of her would not survive it, and she had to know that. Why was I worth that risk to her? If Ren doesn't back off. Back off from Maddox Price specifically. Not the team. Not the journalism. Him. I sat in my car in the dormitory parking lot for a few minutes after I turned the engine off. The heater ticked as it cooled. The campus outside the windows was dark and ordinary, people walking between buildings, nobody paying any attention to me. I took out my phone. Looked at it. There was something here I wasn't seeing yet. A piece of it. Something that connected Jordan's careful smiles to Maddox's careful silences to the way he'd said not yet in the media room, like someone who had been carrying something heavy and was deciding whether to put it down. I didn't have enough. I also had the specific feeling, the one I got before pieces came together, the one Barbara called my pre-story instinct and told me to always trust, that I was standing at the edge of something much larger than a party and a bad idea and a complicated situation. I went inside. I locked the door. Why does she care? I thought, while Sadie talked and the room was warm and normal around me. I didn't have an answer yet. That was the part that kept me up until 2 in the morning. Chapter 11. Power Play. Maddox's POV. Cole's apartment looked like someone who had their life together on the outside and thought about it very little on the inside. I mean that as a compliment. The living room had a couch that was clearly chosen for size rather than aesthetics, a TV mounted on the wall at the correct height, a kitchen table that was used for actual meals. No decoration that hadn't been put there for a reason. A shelf of hockey books and a Michigan State pennant that he had never explained and I had never asked about, and a corkboard above the desk with the practice schedule and 2 phone numbers written in marker. It was the apartment of someone who knew what mattered and didn't waste space on the rest. I liked it. I had been here 5 or 6 times now, enough that I had a usual seat, the left end of the couch, where the armrest was the right height, and enough that Cole stopped offering me drinks from the fridge and just expected me to help myself. Tonight we had film. Not team film, personal film, the footage Cole kept of opposing players he was tracking. He paused at every few minutes to say something, and half the time I was already saying the same thing, which was either a sign we thought the same way or a sign that the reads were just that obvious, and we both knew it was the former. It was easy. That was the word I kept coming back to with Cole. Easy in the way that rare things were easy, not because there was no substance to it but because the substance fit together without forcing. I had not had a lot of easy things in the past year. An hour into the session Cole got up to get water and I leaned back on the couch and looked at the room with the particular absence of thought you get when you've been concentrating hard for a while and your brain takes a breath without asking. That was when I saw the photo. It was on the fridge. One of those small printed photos in a square magnetic frame, the kind of thing that gets put up without ceremony and then stays forever because nobody thinks to take it down. 3 people, Cole on the left, younger, the jaw a little softer, maybe 18, and a kid who had to be the younger brother on the right, tall even then, grinning with the kind of ease that belonged to someone who had never once been in a room they didn't own. And in the middle, her. She was laughing at something off camera. Full laugh, head tilted back slightly, the particular unself-consciousness of a real laugh rather than a posed one. She had her arms around both of them, one hooked through Cole's elbow, one hand grabbing the younger kid's shoulder, and she was wearing a backpack, which meant it was probably a move-in day or an orientation, the beginning of something. She looked younger. She also looked like herself, the same precision in the face, the same quality of paying attention even in a candid photo, like even laughing she was noticing things. I looked at it longer than I meant to. That's my family. I moved my eyes to Cole, who had come back from the kitchen and was reading the moment with a look that was somewhere between easy and watchful. He handed me the water. Orientation day, sophomore year, he said. He sat back down, glanced at the photo himself. Ren's the journalist you talked to for the profile. She's good, right? Sharp kid. She's a good writer, I said. She's a good everything. He said it with the straightforward certainty of someone who had watched a person grow from up close and wasn't performing the compliment. She just doesn't, she's careful about who gets to see it. He looked at the TV. Smart. I drank my water. I waited to see if there was more. There was more. She's off limits though, man. He said it in the same tone he used for most things, plain, no edge to it, just fact. I'm serious about that. You've mentioned, I said. I know. He picked up the remote. Didn't press play yet. Not trying to be a dick about it. I know I've said it twice now and it's probably annoying. I didn't agree or disagree. It's just, he stopped. Put the remote down again. Cole didn't usually stop and restart sentences, he was the kind of person who said things in the order they occurred to him. The pause meant something. She's had guys from my world mess her up before. Teammates, mostly. Guys who knew the rules and decided they didn't apply to them. His jaw moved. I wasn't there when it happened. Both times. And both times I found out after and there was nothing I could do except, he stopped again. I just can't do that again. I held the water bottle. What happened? Doesn't matter what happened. What matters is I wasn't there. He looked at the screen without seeing it. I'm always there for my teammates. I've been there for every person on every team I've ever played on, always. But my sister, he exhaled. She acts like she's fine on her own. She's been acting like she's fine on her own since we were kids. That doesn't mean she is. The room was quiet. Cole wasn't saying this to me as a warning anymore. He wasn't delivering the version that was shaped to keep me in line. He was just talking, the way people talk when they've been holding something carefully for a long time and someone steady happens to be in the room. I thought I had known what Cole was, in this context. A wall. A rule. A boundary with a face and a good skating stride. The thing I was managing around. But sitting on his couch looking at the photo on his fridge, the real one, the laughing one, the one he'd printed and stuck to his refrigerator where he'd see it every day, I understood something I hadn't before. He wasn't protecting a rule. He was protecting a person. He was protecting her with the wrong tools, in the wrong way, in a manner that had probably cost her things he didn't know about and wouldn't understand even if she told him. But the thing underneath it, the reason the wall existed, was real. It was not a captain's policy or a team regulation. It was a brother who had not been there twice and had decided he was never not going to be there again. I had not been prepared for that to make sense to me. Cole picked up the remote. Anyway. Back to normal, the moment folded up and put away. Chapter 12. Interference. Ren's POV. I almost didn't go. That's the part one keep coming back to. I sat on my bed the morning of with my phone in my hand and the address he'd texted, a coffee place on Grover Street, the kind of spot that existed specifically for people who didn't want to run into anyone they knew, and I had every reason to say actually, let's not. I could have typed 4 words and closed the door on all of it. Clean. Final. Exactly the kind of exit a person with a good system would choose. I went. I told myself it was because we needed to clear the air professionally. I told myself it was the rational move, better to address it directly than let it sit and grow into something complicated. I told myself a lot of things on the 7-minute walk to Grover Street and none of them were the real reason. The real reason was that nobody had ever texted me the thing we're both pretending isn't happening before. Nobody had ever named it like that, plainly, in a straight line, without a single word of cushion around it. And I was tired of being the only person in every situation who said the true version of things. I wanted to sit across from someone who did it too. He was there first. Corner table, back to the wall, facing the door, the same instinct I had, the journalist's table, and I noticed that we'd both picked the same position without coordinating it. He had coffee. He stood when I came in, which was unexpected, and then seemed to realize he'd done it and sat back down, which told me something about the gap between what he was used to doing and what he was trying to do. I got coffee at the counter. I sat down across from him. We looked at each other. "Thanks for coming," he said. "You said we needed to talk." I did. So. I wrapped both hands around my cup. "Talk." He looked at me for a moment. That measured look, the one that meant he was deciding how much to give. Then something in it shifted. Not much, just a degree or two. Like a door moving on its hinges without fully opening. "I'll go first," he said. I waited. Michigan State. He said it like he was setting something heavy on the table between us. What I told you in the media room, there were things I wasn't willing to be part of. That's true. But the full version is, he stopped. He turned his cup a quarter turn. There was a player on the team. A senior. He'd been doing things that hurt people, and the people around him knew, and everyone was waiting for someone else to say something because the program was good and nobody wanted to be the one to break it open. I kept my face still. What kind of things? The kind that get called team culture when they're in the room and unacceptable behavior when they're in the press. His voice was even. No anger in it, something that had been past anger long enough to turn into something quieter. I reported it. Formally. In writing, to the compliance office and the athletic director. He paused. The compliance officer was the coach's brother-in-law. The athletic director was 3 months from retirement and did not want a scandal. So it went nowhere, I said. It went nowhere, he said. And then somehow, without anyone saying it directly, I stopped getting the same ice time. My line changed. The coach started citing *team cohesion in every feedback session. He looked at the table. Nobody told me to leave. They just made it clear that staying was going to cost me more than going. The coffee shop was quiet around us. Morning crowd, low voices, a woman at the counter reading something on her phone. Normal, ordinary Tuesday life. You did the right thing, I said. He looked up at that. I know, he said simply, without pride or performance. That's not the part that's hard. The hard part is, he stopped. Nobody here knows. I've been carrying it alone since August and I am, he said the last part carefully. I'm tired of carrying it alone. The room was very still. He looked at me across the table. Not asking for anything specific. Just, present. Telling the truth without decorating it. I thought about what Sadie had said in our dorm room, you could just tell Cole. I thought about the ceiling I'd stared at and the math I always ran and the answer that always came out the same way. 3 years, I said. He waited. I've been at Ashford for 3 years. I looked at my cup. And I have spent all 3 of them making myself small enough to fit inside the version of this place that works for my brother. I said it out loud and it landed differently than it did in my head, heavier, more specific, like a thing that had been theoretical suddenly had weight. Not because he asked me to. He never asked me to. That's the thing I've never been able to explain to anyone. He didn't make the rules. I made them. I made them because I looked at his world and I knew exactly how much room there was in it for me, and I decided the easiest thing was to stay inside those lines. Maddox was very still across from me. Listening the way he listened, all the way, no part of him somewhere else. And then I sat down next to you at a party, I said. And for 2 hours I was just a person. Not Cole's sister. Not a journalist with a press credential. Not someone managing the amount of space she takes up. I stopped. I didn't know I was tired of it until it stopped. The words were out before I'd finished deciding to say them. I looked at the table. Then I made myself look at him, because I had not come here to look at tables. He was watching me with an expression I didn't have a full name for. Not pity, I would have closed down immediately for pity. Something more like recognition. The specific look of one person hearing themselves in another person's sentence. I don't know what to do with that, I said. With you. With any of this. Because you're real and you're here and you're my brother's best friend now, and I built 3 years of rules specifically so that things like this didn't happen. I know, he said. I'm not telling you this because I want you to fix it. I know, he said again, quieter. I'm telling you because I'm tired of knowing things alone. Something moved through his face. He leaned forward slightly, elbows on the table, closer than he'd been, the distance between us smaller than it had been since the back porch in October. Ren, he said. The way he said my name. I had noticed it before, the first time in Cole's hallway, and twice in the media room. He said it like it meant something specific. Not like a way to get my attention. Like the name itself was the thing he was trying to say. Yeah, I said. He opened his mouth. The door opened. I heard it and I didn't look up. People came in and out of coffee shops constantly. It meant nothing. I was focused on the person across from me and the thing he was about to say and the specific quality of the moment which was fragile in the way that real moments were fragile. Ren. Cole's voice. My entire body went cold. I looked up slowly. He was standing 2 steps inside the door in his practice jacket, a leather folder under his arm, looking at me the way you look at something that doesn't make sense yet. His eyes went from me to Maddox and back. The processing happened on his face. I watched it. I watched the moment it stopped being surprise. What's this? He said. The table between us suddenly felt like evidence. The 2 cups, the corner booth, the heads-together closeness that was impossible to explain as anything except what it was. I thought about 6 different things to say and discarded all of them before they reached my mouth. Maddox didn't speak either. 1 second. 2. Cole's jaw set. Not the angry version, the controlled version, which was the one that meant he was hurt enough to be careful about it. He looked at Maddox for a long moment. Something passed between them that I didn't fully understand, the specific language of two people who had spent enough hours together to communicate without words. Then he looked at me. Ren. His voice was flat in a way I had heard maybe 4 times in my life. My place. Tonight. He looked back at Maddox. We'll talk at practice. He walked to the counter. Ordered something. Stood with his back to us and did not look around. I stared at the table. The door hadn't slammed. Cole hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't made a scene in a public place, hadn't said anything he'd have to walk back. He was standing 8 feet away being completely, entirely composed. That was the worst thing. The composure. Because I knew what it cost him and I knew what it meant and I knew that the quiet version of Cole was the one that didn't go away in an hour. Maddox sat across from me without moving. Go, he said. Low, barely audible. Maddox. Go, Ren. He looked at me. Not cold. Not angry. Just very steady in the way he was steady when things were hard. It's okay. Go. I picked up my bag. I stood up. I walked past Cole at the counter and he did not turn around and I did not stop. Outside, the November air hit me like a wall. I stood on the sidewalk on Grover Street with my coffee still in my hand going cold and I thought, no yelling. That was almost worse. Chapter 13. 5-minute major. Dual POV. Ren. Cole's apartment at 7 p.m. looked the same as it always did. That was the disorienting part. Same couch, same mounted TV, same corkboard with the practice schedule. The kitchen table where we'd eaten bad takeout 100 times. The fridge with the photo on it that I had never told him I'd noticed. He was at the kitchen counter when I came in. 2 mugs, already made, he'd known exactly when I'd arrive because he knew me, he always knew me, and that was the thing about Cole that made everything harder. He was not doing this to be cruel. He was doing this because he was my brother and he was hurt and those 2 things had always been the same event with him. I sat at the table. He brought the mugs over and sat across from me. He looked at me for a long moment. I have one rule, he said. 1. Cole. Let me say it. Not a snap. A request. He was holding himself in careful hands. I have one rule about my world and your world. You knew it before I said it the first time. I've said it twice since. And today I walk into a coffee shop and, he stopped. His hand around the mug was very still. I thought he was different. That landed wrong. This isn't about him. It's. I know what it's about. He looked up. How long? It's not, there's nothing. Ren. His voice broke slightly on my name. Not anger. Something rawer than that. Don't do that. Don't do the version where everything is fine. Not with me. I looked at him across the table. My brother, who had put a photo of me on his refrigerator and scheduled his friendships around my absence and built a wall around me without understanding that he was building it on the wrong side. I'm a grown woman, I said. I know you are. I make my own choices. I know that too. He set the mug down. That's not what this is. Then what is it? It's, he stopped. Started again. He has things going on, Ren. Things he hasn't told me. Secrets from before he got here. And I'm not saying that to be, I'm saying it because I don't know the full picture and I don't want you to get burned by something I couldn't see coming. Maybe he has reasons for those things. Maybe he does. Maybe those reasons are better than you'd expect. Maybe. His eyes were on mine. But I don't know that yet. And until I know it, I needed you to stay out of it. That's all I needed. That's all you needed, I said quietly. He heard it. The way I'd said it. I watched him hear it. What does that mean, he said. It means I have been staying out of it for 3 years, Cole. The words came out steadier than I expected. I stay out of your world, your locker room, your friendships, your, I built my entire life here in the spaces you weren't using. I did that because I love you and because it was easier and because you asked me to the first week I was here and I said yes without thinking about what I was agreeing to." His face had changed. The controlled version was still there but something underneath it had shifted. "That's not," he stopped. "I never asked you to disappear. You asked me not to make you choose," I said. "That's the same thing." The kitchen was very quiet. He looked at me like he was seeing something he'd put his hand over a long time ago and forgotten was there. Not surprise, he was too honest for that kind of surprise. More like the specific expression of someone who has known a thing was true and has been hoping they were wrong about it. "She's had guys from my world mess her up before." I said it back to him. His own words from his own apartment, words he'd said to Maddox, words I was not supposed to know he'd said. I watched his face register that I knew. "I was trying to protect you," he said. "I know you were," I said. "But you don't get to decide what burns me anymore, Cole. I'm the one who gets to decide that." The silence after that had different dimensions to it. Not empty, full of the things that had needed saying for 3 years that had just found the surface. He didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He sat with it the way he sat with everything hard, squarely, without flinching away. We didn't fix it that night. I'm not saying we did. There were things said that sat in the air between us and were going to need more than one kitchen table conversation to settle. But something had moved. Something that had been locked in the same position since freshman year had moved, and even though it hurt in the specific way that necessary things hurt, I drove home knowing it was the kind of hurt that meant something real had finally happened. That was something. Maddox. Practice the next morning was normal. That was Cole's answer to most things, normalcy, maintained through sheer discipline, the captain's face that never let the locker room see the temperature of his interior. He ran warm-ups the same way he always did. Drills at full speed. His passes were sharp and on target and he skated like someone burning something off. He passed to me perfectly every time. I caught every one and sent them back and we moved through the practice session like two people who had no history in a coffee shop on Grover Street, and the team noticed nothing, and that was the point. Reeves skated beside me during a break in the scrimmage. He didn't say anything for a moment, just caught his breath. Then, "Cole's been hitting the ice since 6 this morning." I looked at him. "Just saying," Reeves said, and skated away. The hallway after practice was quiet. Most of the team had cleared out, showers, lunch, afternoon classes. I was in no hurry. I sat in front of my locker and worked off my gear in order, left to right, the ritual that never changed. I heard Cole's footsteps before he appeared. I knew his stride well enough by now, even and deliberate, never rushed, the walk of someone who decided where they were going before they started moving. He stopped in front of my locker. I looked up at him. His face was doing the thing I'd seen once or twice, the version underneath the captain version, the one that was just Cole, without the performance of the role. It was harder to look at. More real. "What I said at orientation," he said. "About my sister." I started to say his name. He held up one hand. Not aggressively. "Just, wait." "I meant it," he said. The hallway was empty except for us. The overhead lights hummed in the silence. He looked at me for a moment. Not with anger, with something that was harder to answer than anger. With the face of someone who had built a trust carefully over 3 months and was now standing on it and feeling it shift beneath his feet. "I like you, Price," he said. "I don't say that easily. You know that." A pause. "Don't make me regret it." He didn't wait for an answer. He went back down the hallway toward the coach's office and the door swung shut behind him and I sat alone in front of my locker in the quiet. I thought about Ren at the coffee shop table saying I'm tired of knowing things alone. I thought about the way she'd said it, not asking for rescue, just stating a fact, the same way she did everything. Directly. Without decoration. I thought about Cole's face in the hallway. The trust in it, and the fracture in the trust, and the fact that I had put both there. I said yes. In my head, to the empty locker room, I gave Cole the answer he'd wanted. "I like you, Price. Don't make me regret it." I said yes. I sat with the yes for a long time. I did not know if I meant it. That was the honest answer, and I was trying, against every instinct I had, to manage situations cleanly, to be honest. I laced my shoes. I picked up my bag. I walked out of the locker room into an afternoon that was cold and flat and ordinary, and I thought about what it cost to want two things that could not exist at the same time. I didn't have an answer for that either. Chapter 14. Penalty Box. Ren's POV. 3 weeks. I got very good at things in 3 weeks. I got good at walking a specific route through the journalism building that avoided the line of sight from the bulletin board where I'd first run into him. I got good at scanning rooms before I committed to entering them. I got good at the blank professional expression that said I am doing work in this space and that is all I am doing, and wearing it like a coat over everything else. I was fine. I filed 2 pieces for Barbara, including one on the university's new media scholarship program that she called the best thing I'd written since the provost piece, which would have felt better if I could have sat with it properly. I went to class in the library and 3 shifts at the campus radio station where I'd started helping with the sports desk. I had dinner with Sadie twice and let her talk about her own life for a whole meal without steering the conversation anywhere near mine, which I think we were both grateful for. I was completely, entirely fine. And then on a Tuesday afternoon I went to the arena for a press credential renewal and walked straight into the problem. The arena's main hallway, the one that ran from the media desk to the rink entrance, was long and poorly lit, and at 3 p.m. it was usually quiet. I had timed it specifically. In and out. A signature and a new lanyard and back to my car in under 10 minutes. I was halfway down the hall when I heard voices ahead. Maddox, Reeves, and a third guy I recognized as one of the defense men, coming from the direction of the locker room. I had 2 seconds and no exits. I kept walking. Callaway. Reeves raised a hand in greeting, entirely unbothered, the same energy he brought to everything. Credential day. Yeah. I stopped at a natural distance. Professional. Easy. 3 people in a hallway, nothing notable happening. Renewal. Cool, cool. He nudged the defenseman. You know Ren. She wrote the transfer piece. The good one. The defenseman said something polite. I said something polite back. I was looking at him, and at Reeves, and I was doing it with the particular skill of someone who had spent 3 weeks practicing not looking somewhere and had gotten very good at it. Then the defenseman's phone went off. He looked at it, said sorry, 1 SEC, and stepped back around the corner. Reeves looked at me. Looked at Maddox. Looked back at me. He had the face of someone who saw things people weren't trying to show him, which I had identified as one of his primary qualities from the first interview. It was an asset on the ice. In a hallway it was a liability. You two, he said, very pleasantly, are both terrible at this. He put his hands in his pockets and walked back around the corner after the defenseman. The hallway was empty except for us. Neither of us spoke for a moment. How are you? Maddox said. Busy. I looked at my lanyard. You. Fine. Good. Good. I nodded. He nodded. 2 people in a hallway being extraordinarily, painfully civil. I adjusted the strap on my bag. I should get the credential. Right, he said. Good luck with, the season's going well. It came out more formal than I intended. I heard it. I couldn't fix it. Thanks. I started walking. Ren. My name in his voice. Just that. Just my name, said the specific way he said it, like it meant the thing he wasn't saying. I stopped. I stood with my back to him in the middle of a poorly lit hallway and I waited for the rest of the sentence. I waited for whatever he was about to say that would make this easier or harder or real or final. I waited for the thing after my name. It didn't come. The silence stretched out for long enough that I understood. He'd started something he didn't have the words for yet, or had the words and decided against them, or was doing the same thing I was doing, standing on the edge of something and not jumping because the ground below was uncertain. I kept walking. The media desk was at the end of the hall. I got the credential. I signed the form. The woman at the desk said something about the team's record and I said something back and I was present and normal for all of it. I got to my car. I sat in it. The lot was half empty. 2 rows over, a group of students were loading hockey equipment into a van. Ordinary Tuesday afternoon. The sky was the flat gray of November in New York, the kind that sat low and even and didn't change. I put both hands on the steering wheel. He had said my name like it was a whole sentence and then not finished the sentence, and I had kept walking, and that had been the right thing to do. I knew it was the right thing to do. I had made a list, at some point in the 3 weeks, of all the reasons it was the right thing to do, and the list was solid. It held up. I sat in my car for 10 minutes. The thing about good systems is they work until they don't, and the moment they stop working is always the same, when what you want and what you've decided diverge enough that maintaining the decision costs more than you're able to keep spending. I had not reached that point. I was not going to tell myself I had reached that point. I started the car. I drove back to campus. I parked and went to the library and sat in the stacks with my notes for the media scholarship piece, and I was there for 4 hours and I did good work. And somewhere in the back of everything, in the quiet underneath the quiet, I heard my own name in his voice. Once was enough. That was the problem with once. Chapter 15. The Blind Pass. Maddox's POV. I was not expecting company. Tuesday nights I kept to myself, film review, meal prep, the particular kind of silence that let me reset after a week of being around people. I had learned early in my hockey life that I needed the quiet the way some people needed the crowd, and I had arranged my schedule around protecting it. So when someone knocked at my apartment door at 8:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in late November, I answered it with the expression of a person who had not been expecting company and was not entirely glad about it. The kid on the other side was tall. Broad through the shoulders in the way of someone still growing into his frame. Dark hair, lighter eyes than Cole's, and Cole's jaw but softer, the same architecture, earlier in the build. I knew who he was before he said anything. "You're Finn," I said. "Yeah." He had Cole's directness too, apparently, no preamble, no apology for showing up. "Can I come in?" I looked at him for a moment. Then I stepped back. He sat at my kitchen table and turned his phone over in his hands the way people did when they needed to say something and hadn't landed on the right opening yet. I made coffee because it was something to do and set a mug in front of him and sat across from him and waited. He was 18. I'd seen him at a distance a few times, in the arena, once near Cole's building, but we hadn't spoken. He was a walk-on, first year, still finding his footing in a program that ran on reputation and history and Cole Calloway's specific gravity. "You don't have to look at me like I'm going to explode," he said. "I'm not looking at you like anything," I said. "You look like Cole when he's being patient." He wrapped his hands around the mug. "It's kind of the same expression." I waited. He exhaled. "Okay. So. I was in the locker room after practice today. Late, I forgot my phone charger, I went back for it. There were still a few seniors in there." He looked at the table. "They didn't see me come in." I kept my face still. "What were they saying?" "There's a thing going around." He said it like it tasted bad. "A bet. One of the senior guys started it, Kraus, I think, the right defenseman, about Ren." He looked up at me. "About how long it takes before she writes something bad about the team. Like a hit piece. Whether she's doing the profile to get close enough to burn the program." He paused. "There's money on it." "Not a lot, but." "How many players?" I said. "I don't know. 3, maybe 4 in the conversation. Could be more." His jaw moved. "I don't know what to do with it. I can't tell Cole because Cole will go nuclear and it'll blow up the whole locker room, and I can't tell Ren because," he stopped. "I just couldn't not tell anyone." I thought about Ren in the media room doing exactly what she'd been hired to do. I thought about her press credential and her camera and the specific professional face she wore when she was working, and I thought about 4 teammates running a betting pool on whether she was trustworthy. Something cold settled in my chest. "I'll handle Kraus," I said. Finn looked at me. "How?" "Not the way Cole would," I said. "But it'll stop." He nodded slowly. He turned the mug another quarter turn. He was building to something else. I could read it the same way I read plays developing on ice, the tells that came before the action. "There's something else," he said. "Tell me." "Jordan." He said the name with the flat economy of someone who had an opinion about a person and was editing it for the room. She told Cole something. About a party. Like, a specific party from October. She told him Ren was there. He watched my face. She didn't say who Ren was with. But Cole's been asking around. The kitchen went very quiet. I heard the refrigerator. The heat coming through the vent. A car outside. When? I said. Today. After practice. I heard Cole on the phone with someone, I don't know who, and he was asking whether anyone saw Ren at a party on Birch Street in October. Finn looked at me carefully. He was reading my face the way Callaways apparently read faces. You know something about that party? It wasn't a question. I looked at him. He was 18, and he was smart, and he was sitting in my kitchen because he didn't know where else to bring this, which meant he trusted me with it, which meant I owed him something honest. Don't ask me that right now, I said. He held my eyes for a moment. Then he nodded, once, and let it go. That was a Callaway quality too, I realized. Knowing when to stop pulling a thread. He left at 9:30. I walked him to the door and watched him go down the exterior stairs and disappear around the corner of the building, and then I stood in the doorway for a moment in the cold air thinking about Cole on the phone asking around about a party in October. Jordan had moved faster than I'd expected. I went back inside. I picked up my phone. Ren's name in my contacts, and used since the text 3 weeks ago that had started everything and ended the thing before it properly began. I called. 4 rings. Voicemail. I hung up and typed instead. Jordan told Cole about the party. Heads up. I put the phone down. I finished the coffee I'd made for myself before Finn arrived, which had gone lukewarm. I washed both mugs. The phone buzzed. I know. He called me an hour ago. I read it. Typed, what happened? 3 dots. Then. I handled it. Then nothing. I stood in my kitchen holding my phone and staring at those 3 words. I handled it. Clean and complete and very Ren, not asking for anything, not offering anything, just reporting from the field in the tightest possible language. She'd handled it. I wanted to know what that meant. I wanted to know what she'd told Cole and what Cole had said and whether handled meant resolved or meant I put a lid on it and it's still boiling underneath. I had questions and she had given me 3 words and then silence and I was standing in my kitchen at 9:45 at night turning my phone over in my hand like the rest of the answer was written on the back. I typed, you okay? The 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then nothing. I put my phone face down on the counter. I went to sit on my couch and I turned on the TV and I watched it without seeing it for a while, and I thought about Finn's face when he'd said Cole's asking around, and I thought about Jordan Page and the specific deliberateness of a move like this, telling Cole just enough to set something moving, not enough to land it fully. That wasn't a worried girlfriend making a judgment call. That was a strategy. The question was what she was protecting. Chapter 16. Icing. Ren's POV. I called Cole before he could call me. That was the move, always get to the conversation first, shape the ground before someone else shapes it for you. I had learned that from 3 years of being a journalist and before that from being the middle sibling in a family where information was currency and you spent it carefully. He answered on the second ring. Hey, he said. Careful. That single word wrapped in careful. I heard Jordan told you something, I said. A pause. Ren. I was at a party in October. On Birch Street. It was a swim team thing, Tyler Chen's house, and Sadie wanted to go and you were at an away game. I said it in a straight line, no gaps for him to fill in. I'm allowed to go to parties, Cole. I'm 20 years old. Silence on his end. I counted 3 seconds. I'm not angry about the party, he said. That was not what I'd been expecting. Then why did Jordan? That's what I've been sitting with all afternoon. His voice had an edge to it that was not pointed at me. She called me. Told me you were there, said she thought I should know, said she was telling me as a friend. A pause. Except Jordan knows I don't care about you going to parties. She knows that. So the fact that she framed it as something I needed to know means she thought I'd care for a different reason. I held my phone very still. Cole was not stupid. I had never made the mistake of thinking he was, but in the moments when it mattered most I sometimes forgot how much he saw. So why does she think you'd care? I said. That's the question. He was quiet for a moment. Was there someone there? I was there with Sadie, I said. Ren. That's not what I asked. My jaw was tight. I kept my voice flat. No. The silence that followed was 3 seconds long and felt like 30. I heard him breathing on the other side. I heard him deciding. Okay, he said. He let it go. But the way he said okay, measured, like a man choosing not to press on something because pressing would require him to deal with the answer, sat in my chest the whole rest of the conversation and was still sitting there when we hung up an hour later. He almost believed me. That was the thing. He almost believed me. And the almost was a crack, and I had put it there, and I knew that cracks had a tendency to grow without help. I walked back to the dorm in the dark with my bag on my shoulder and my hands shoved in my pockets, and I was running through the conversation the way I ran through interview recordings, looking for the moments that revealed more than the words said, clocking what was under the surface. Cole wasn't angry about the party. Cole was angry about Jordan's framing. About the fact that his girlfriend had called him with a warning disguised as information and he was smart enough to see the seams in it. That meant something. I didn't know what yet. The dorm building came into view. And then I saw Jordan. She was standing near the entrance. Not pacing, standing, the way someone stands when they've decided to be somewhere and they're not going to pretend otherwise. She had her arms crossed against the cold and her eyes on the path, and she looked up when I was 10 feet away. I stopped. I'm not doing this outside, I said. Fine. She gestured at the entrance. Inside, then. The lobby was empty. Fluorescent lights and a bulletin board with flyers and the specific dead air quality of a college building. At 10 p.m. Jordan stood near the elevator bank and I stood near the door, and we looked at each other without the coffee cups and the social smiles and all the things we'd been using to pad the edges of our interactions for 3 months. How much did you tell him? I said. Enough. She held my eyes. Not everything. Why not? Because I want to talk to you first. She uncrossed her arms. I know it was Maddox. At the party. I saw you leave together. The lobby was very still. Jordan. I was there, she said. Not inside, I drove past on my way somewhere else and I saw you both coming off the front porch. I wasn't looking for it. It wasn't planned. Something in her face moved. Not guilt. Something more complicated than guilt. I didn't know who he was yet. Cole hadn't brought him around. But then a week later Cole's talking about his new transfer, showing me photos from practice, and I recognized him. She paused. And I've been sitting on it since. For 2 months, I said. For 2 months. She looked at me. I'm not your enemy, Ren. I want you to hear that. You just threatened to tell my brother something that would blow up my life. I threatened to tell your brother something that would blow up his life, she said. And yours. And Maddox's. She said it without heat. Just flat. Which is why I haven't told him yet. Because once it's out, it can't go back in. I looked at her. What do you want? I want you to kill the hockey feature. Why? She was quiet for a moment. Long enough that I knew the next part was real, not the practiced version, the actual one. Because Maddox Price's full story involves a coach at Michigan State covering for a player who did something serious, she said. And the player involved is someone Cole grew up with. Played juniors with. Someone Cole has considered a friend for 6 years. She looked at me. If that comes out through your article, Cole finds out everything at once, the cover-up, his friend's role in it, the fact that Maddox knew and didn't tell him, and whatever is happening between you and Maddox. Her voice was steady. That's too much at once. Cole will fall apart and he has 8 games left in the regular season and scouts at 3 of them. The fluorescent light above the elevator hummed. You're doing this for his season, I said. I'm doing this because I love him, she said. Simply, like that was the whole explanation. And because I have watched him hold this team together for 3 years and I am not going to watch it come apart because of a story that doesn't have to run right now. I looked at her for a long time. You should have come to me like this from the beginning, I said. Something moved across her face. I know. A pause. I panicked. I thought if you backed off the story it would just, I thought a warning would be enough. Threatening people isn't a warning. I know, she said again, quieter. I looked at the floor. Then at her. I need to think. Okay. And you need to stop talking to Cole about this. Don't say anything else until I figure out what to do. She nodded once. I went up to my room. I locked the door. Sadie was out, her note on the whiteboard said back by midnight, don't stress. I sat on the edge of my bed and I sat with everything Jordan had just said and I felt it rearranging things inside my chest like furniture being moved. Jordan knew about Michigan State. Jordan had known, for weeks, maybe longer, and she had used it as a lever without understanding that she was holding something much larger than leverage. Which meant someone had told her. Or she had found it herself. And if she had found it herself, then it wasn't as buried as Maddox thought it was. And if it wasn't buried? I picked up my phone. I was not going to be able to carry this one alone. Chapter 17. Spearing. Maddox's POV. She called at 11:15. I picked up on the first ring, which I wasn't going to analyze, and said her name, and she said I need to tell you something in the particular voice she used when she had already organized the information and was ready to deliver it without cushion. I was already sitting up. Tell me, I said. She went in order. That was how she did everything. She was built for narrative, for finding the through line, and even at 11 at night with something serious in her voice she gave it to me structured and clear. Jordan outside the dorm. The lobby. The things Jordan had said. I listened without interrupting. When she got to the end, I want you to kill the hockey feature, because it involves a player Cole knows from juniors, I stopped breathing for a moment. The apartment was very quiet around me. She knows about Michigan State, I said. Yes, Ren said. She didn't say how. But she knows enough. I stood up. I moved to the window, not because there was anything to see, just because staying still wasn't working. Ren. I stopped. How much do you know about why I really left? What you told me at the coffee shop, she said. A coach who covered for a player's misconduct. That you reported it and it went nowhere and then you were pushed out. I looked at the dark street below the window. There's more, I said. She was quiet. Waiting. The specific Ren silence that meant I'm here, I'm not going anywhere, say the thing. The player. I stopped. I had not said this out loud to anyone. Not once since August, not to a single person at Ashford, not in any of the carefully worded conversations about my transfer where I gave the outline without the inside. The player the coach was covering for, the thing he did, the pattern of things, I knew his name. I had played against him in juniors. He was 2 years ahead of me and he was Cole's teammate for a season. They were close. I heard her breathe. Cole doesn't know, I said. He's never known. They lost touch when this guy went to Michigan State and Cole came to Ashford, and as far as I know Cole has him in the category of guy I played with, good memories, no contact anymore. I pressed my hand flat against the window glass. I thought it was buried. I thought the way they handled it, which was badly, which was the whole problem, at least meant it stayed inside the program. Jordan found it, Ren said. Or someone told her. Yes. So it's not buried. No, I stepped back from the window. It is not buried. The thing about carrying a secret for a long time is that you build your life around it without fully realizing you're doing it. Every conversation at Ashford that touched on Michigan State, I had felt the weight of it. Every time Cole mentioned this friend by name in a passing story, a junior league memory, a funny thing from a road trip 6 years ago, I had felt the weight of it. I had managed the weight. I had gotten so practiced at managing it that I had started to mistake managing for resolved. It was not resolved. It had simply been waiting. How connected are they still? Ren asked. Cole and this player. I don't know, I said honestly. 6 years is a long time. But Cole doesn't let people go easily. You know that better than I do. Yeah, she said, quietly. I moved back to the couch. Sat down. Put my free hand on my knee and looked at it. What did Jordan say she wanted exactly? Kill the feature. She said if the story doesn't run, Cole doesn't have to find out. About any of it, the player, you, me. A pause. She's framing it as protection. For him. For his season. And you believe her? I believe she loves him, Ren said. I don't believe she thought this through. That sounded right to me. Jordan's move had the shape of someone acting from real feeling but with the execution of someone panicking, the threat, the leverage, the escalation from warning to confrontation. Not calculated. Frightened. If the story runs, Ren said, carefully, Cole finds out everything. The Michigan State piece, his friend's role, the fact that you knew. All at once. She stopped. And whatever is happening between us. Another pause, smaller. Was happening. I sat with that for a moment. There were things I could do here. I had gotten good at identifying exits, the clean ones, the ones that let you leave without leaving a mark. I could ask Ren to sit on the story. I could give Jordan what she wanted. I could let this particular piece of Michigan State stay buried for one more season and tell myself it was strategic rather than afraid. I could keep managing the weight. I thought about what I'd told Ren in the coffee shop. I'm tired of carrying it alone. I had meant it when I said it and I meant it more now, sitting in my apartment at 11:30 at night holding my phone, feeling the weight of a year's worth of careful management pressing on every available surface. I thought about the compliance officer who was the coach's brother-in-law. The athletic director who wanted a quiet retirement. The senior player who was still, somewhere, living the life he'd built on a foundation of people who had decided their comfort was worth more than someone else's safety. I thought about Ren saying I'm tired of knowing things alone and the specific accuracy of it, the way she had named the thing that was true for both of us, in the same sentence, without making it a question. Maddox. Her voice was careful but not soft, she didn't soften things for me, which was one of the things I had noticed about her. What do you want to do? I looked at the wall across from me. Ordinary apartment wall. White paint. Nothing on it yet because I had not been sure enough about staying to put anything there. I thought about staying. I thought about what staying required. I want to stop letting other people hold this over me, I said. Ren was quiet on the other end of the phone. Not the processing quiet, the recognizing kind. The quiet of someone who has heard the right answer come out of an unexpected place. Okay, she said, after a moment. Okay. That's what I needed to know. A pause. I'm not running the story the way it is. It's not ready and I won't do that to Cole without, it needs to be right. But I need to start working on it properly. Which means I need everything. You'll have it, I said. Maddox. Her voice dropped slightly. This is going to be hard. I know. Cole is going to find out things in an order that isn't ideal and there's no way to control that completely. I know that too. And when it comes out, she stopped. You should be the one to tell him. Not the article. Not Jordan. You. I thought about Cole's face in the hallway after practice. I like you, Price. Don't make me regret that. I thought about 3 months of easy evenings on his couch, film sessions, and team dinners and the specific comfort of being trusted by someone who didn't trust easily. I thought about what it was going to look like when I told him. Yeah, I said. Are you sure? I was not sure. I was not sure about most of the things that were happening right now, where this ended, what it cost, what came out the other side. I was sure about exactly one thing, which was that I had carried this for a year and it had cost me my program and my position and my ability to trust the people around me, and I was done paying for someone else's choices with my silence. I'm sure, I said. She exhaled quietly. A long breath, like something had been coiled in her chest and had just been given room to move. Then we figure it out, she said. We. I sat with that word for a moment. Turned it over. Get some sleep, I said. You too. She hung up. I sat in my apartment in the quiet and felt the weight differently than I had before, still heavy, but changed. Something in the distribution of it had shifted. Like a load you've been carrying wrong for so long that you'd forgotten there was a better way to hold it. Shared, I thought. Not gone. Not fixed. But not just mine anymore either. Chapter 18. The Dressing Room. Wren's POV. I've never killed a story. Not once in 3 years of writing for the Courier. Not the scholarship piece that made 2 administrators stop saying hello to me in the halls. Not the dining staff walkout piece that had the university's communications department sending Barbara politely worded emails for 2 weeks. Not the provost piece that Barbara had to run past the legal advisor before it published. I had never killed a story because I believed, the way I believed very few things completely, that stories had a right to exist. That the truth had a right to exist. That the people who got hurt by the things that got buried deserved someone who would do the work of digging carefully and writing honestly and putting it where people could see it. I was not killing this one. But I was going to do it right. Barbara was in her office at 8:15 on a Wednesday morning when most of her staff wasn't in yet, which was where she always was, because Barbara treated sleep as a logistic rather than a necessity and the Courier as a second heartbeat. She had her bad coffee and a red pen and a proof sheet from the weekend edition spread across her desk, and she looked up when I knocked with the particular expression of someone who could tell from the doorway whether you had something real or something small. I had something real and she could see it immediately. "Sit down," she said, before I'd said a word. I sat. I told her about the transfer profile and what Maddox had told me off the record and what Jordan had told me in the lobby and the shape of the Michigan State story underneath the surface of all of it. I didn't use names for the other players yet. I had enough to outline the structure without burning anyone before I was ready. Barbara did not interrupt. She set her red pen down after 30 seconds and did not pick it up again, which meant she was listening with everything. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then her eyes did the thing I had seen twice before in 3 years, a specific light, the kind that meant she was looking at something worth looking at. Not excitement, exactly. The professional version of it. The recognition of a story that was bigger than the one you started with. "How solid is the sourcing?" she said. "Not solid enough to run yet. I have one primary source on the Michigan State end, nothing documented. I need records, I need secondary sources, I need to find out how deep the cover-up went and who else knew. I had been thinking about this since 11 o'clock last night. But the bones are there. The story is real. Timeline. I don't know yet. Weeks, not days. Maybe longer." She nodded. "Write the draft you have. Everything you know right now, structured as if it could run. Don't send it to me yet, write it for yourself, so you know what you have and what's missing." She picked up the red pen again. "And Wren. Yeah. The profile is still a profile. Don't let the bigger story swallow it." She looked at me over the proof sheet. "Price talked to you. That piece stands on its own. Run them separately when the time comes." I nodded. "And the conflict of interest," she said. I held very still. "You're Cole Calloway's sister," she said, plainly, because Barbara was always plain about things. "Your brother is the team captain. Your source is his teammate. That's a conflict and you know it." "I know. Tell me it doesn't affect the work." I looked at her. "It doesn't affect the work." She held my eyes for 3 seconds. Then, "Okay." She went back to the proof sheet. "Close the door on your way out." I wrote the draft that afternoon. Not at the library, in my dorm room, door locked, Sadie in class, laptop on the desk with my notes spread out on both sides of it. I wrote it the way Barbara had told me to write things when I was a first-year staffer still learning, like no one was going to read it, which meant nothing held back, nothing softened, just the facts in the order they mattered with the gaps left clearly marked. It took 4 hours. When I was done I had 1,900 words with 11 blank spaces where the documentation still needed to go, and 3 source callouts marked in red that I hadn't filled yet. I read it once. Then I saved it to a folder I labeled with a date and nothing else. I didn't send it anywhere. I didn't show it to anyone. I held it. That was the hardest part, not running it, not acting on it, sitting with the thing you had built and knowing it wasn't ready and making yourself wait. Every instinct I had said you have something, do something with it. Every piece of journalist training I had said you run it when it's right, not when it's ready in your hands. The story would wait. The other thing wouldn't. I called Jordan at 7 p.m. She answered on the third ring. Her voice had the texture of someone who had been waiting for the call and had rehearsed several versions of how it would go. Ren. I'm not killing the feature, I said. Silence. Jordan. I sat on the edge of my desk. I'm not going to pretend I'm not a journalist because it's convenient for someone else. That's not who I am and it's not who I'm going to be. I kept my voice level. You can tell Cole whatever you want. That's your choice and I can't stop you. Ren, you don't understand what? I do understand, I said. I understand better than you think. I know what's in that story and I know what it's going to cost and I'm not running it carelessly. I'm not running it tomorrow. I'm not running it until it's right and complete and I've given every person involved a chance to respond. I stopped. But I am running it. That's not something you get to change. She was quiet for a long moment. There's one more thing, I said. What? If Cole finds out you've been holding this over me, and if he finds out you went to him with a warning designed to get him worked up enough to handle a situation you didn't want to handle yourself, I stopped. That's worse than anything you're trying to prevent. You know that. A long silence. He trusts you, I said. Don't make him stop. Jordan hung up. I sat with the dead call for a moment. Then I put my phone down on the desk and pressed both palms flat on the surface and breathed in and out twice, the way I did after hard interviews when the adrenaline needed somewhere to go. It was done. Whatever she did next was hers. I had said the true version. That was all I could do. My phone buzzed at 9:47. What did you do? Not a question. Maddox had the same quality in texts that he had in person: economy, no decoration. 3 words that covered a lot of ground. I looked at the message for a moment. Then I typed back, the right thing. I think. I put the phone down. Picked it up. Put it down again. The 3 dots came after 30 seconds. Stayed long enough that I knew whatever was coming had been written and reconsidered at least once. Then, you're terrifying. I stared at that for a long time. Not frightening. Not reckless. Not you shouldn't have done that or do you know what this could cause. Just, terrifying. In the specific way that meant he understood exactly what I'd done and why, and the doing of it had landed on him as something large. I thought about the coffee shop and the 14 seconds before Cole walked in and everything that had almost happened in them. I thought about a library pen on a floor. I thought about the thing we're both pretending isn't happening sent at 9:15 on a Tuesday night by someone who planned everything and had stopped planning just long enough to tell the truth. I typed, I know. I sent it. Then I closed my phone and sat in my quiet dorm room with the draft saved in the unnamed folder and the call to Jordan behind me and the weeks of work ahead of me, and I thought, this is what it feels like to be a person with a spine. I had always had one. I had just been keeping it very politely folded for a long time. Not anymore. Chapter 19. Too many men. Dual POV. Maddox. It was Finn. Of course it was Finn. The kid had been moving through Cole's world all semester like a smaller moon in the same orbit, picking up information through proximity the way you pick up a language by living inside it. He didn't mean to do it. He wasn't strategic about it. He just happened to be present for things, and present people see things, and Finn Calloway was very present and saw most things clearly. He told Cole about the warning. Not the whole thing, not the party, not what was in the text, not my name attached to any of it, but enough. That I had reached out to Ren about something involving Jordan. That I had known about Jordan's move before Cole did. He told me this himself, in a text on Thursday morning. I think I messed up. Cole asked me something last night and I answered it and I think I gave him more than I meant to. I read it at 6:40 a.m. standing in the kitchen in my practice clothes. Then I put my phone in my pocket and went to the rink an hour early and skated by myself in the empty arena until my legs told me I was done, and I thought about everything I was about to have to say out loud. Cole found me in the locker room after practice. The team had cleared out, he had waited for the team to clear out, which told me he had thought about the timing, which told me this wasn't going to be loose and reactive. Cole at his most composed was Cole who had already decided what he wanted from a conversation before he started it. He sat on the bench across from me. He had his practice jacket on, hands loose between his knees, and he looked at me with that face, the underneath one, not the captain one. "Tell me what I don't know," he said. I set my gloves down. "The party in October," I said. "On Birch Street." "I was there." "Your sister was there." "We met before either of us knew who the other one was." I said it the way I decided to say it on the ice at 6 a.m., straight, no angles, no version that tried to make it smaller than it was. We talked for a couple of hours. I didn't ask her name. She didn't ask mine. Cole's expression didn't move. "Then I met you," I said. "And I found out who she was in a hallway in the journalism building a week later." "The interview," he said. "Yes." "The coffee shop." "Yes." He looked at me. "Is that everything?" "No," I held his eyes. "There were a few other things. A library. An arena hallway." "Nothing," I stopped, because nothing happened was technically true and also completely dishonest about what had been operating underneath the surface of everything for 2 months. It didn't go anywhere because I stopped it. Because of you. Because I meant what I said in the hallway after practice. But you wanted it to go somewhere. I didn't answer fast enough. Cole looked at the floor. He put his elbows on his knees and stared at the concrete for a long time. I sat across from him and said nothing, because there was nothing to add. The facts were the facts. Dressing them up wouldn't change the weight of them. "She picked you out at a party," he said. His voice had gone quiet. "Without knowing who you were." "Yes. She doesn't do that." He said it like he was telling himself something. Like he was working something out. "She doesn't pick people. She goes to one party in 3 years, she finds the one corner in the whole house where it's quiet, and she sits down next to." He stopped. Breathed. "She sat down next to you." "Yes," I said. He was quiet for a long moment. "That makes it worse," he said. I didn't argue with that. He was right that it made it worse, not in the way he might have meant it, not as an accusation, but in the straightforward way that true things were worse than untrue ones. Because it hadn't been reckless or stupid or the product of a bad decision. It had been two people finding each other without trying, and the only thing wrong with it was the last name she happened to carry. Cole sat up. He ran one hand over his face. He looked like someone who had been handed something he didn't know what to do with and was being honest about not knowing. "I'm not going to punch you," he said. "I know," I said. "I want to be clear that I thought about it." "That's fair." He almost laughed. Not quite. Something that moved in his face in the direction of it and then decided against. He looked at me for a long moment with the expression I had learned in 3 months of sitting on his couch and running his drills and being trusted by him, the real one, the one that didn't perform anything. "She's the most important person in my life," he said. "Not the team, not the scholarship, not any of this. Her." A pause. "If this goes wrong." "I know," I said. "I'm serious, Price." "Cole." I held his eyes. "I know." He stood up. He looked at the ceiling briefly, the way people did when they were asking something they couldn't direct at anyone in the room. Then he looked back at me. "We're going to have another conversation," he said. "Not today. But soon." "Okay. There are things I need to know." "There are things I need to tell you," I said. "When you're ready." He looked at me at that. Heard the weight in it. He was smart enough not to push, not today, with this much already on the table. But he filed it and I could see him file it. "Go home," he said. I picked up my gloves. I stood. "Price." He said it to my back as I headed for the door. I stopped. "She's been alone in this thing for 2 months," he said. "Whatever this is. She's been carrying it alone." A pause. "She shouldn't have had to do that." I stood at the door for a moment. "No," I said. "She shouldn't have." I left. Ren. My phone buzzed at 6:15 p.m. Cole. I stared at the notification for 3 seconds before I opened it. "We need to talk." "I'm not angry. I'm just, can you come over?" I sat on my bed. "Read it twice." Then I read the part that mattered, "I'm not angry," and I turned it over carefully, the way you turn things over when you'd been bracing for a specific impact and something different arrived instead. He knew. He knew something, enough to want a conversation, and whatever Maddox had told him had not produced anger. That was the word I kept landing on. Not "I'm fine" or "it's okay," just "I'm not angry." Which was specific. Which was Cole telling me, in the most compressed possible version, that he had gotten through the first layer of this and found something other than what he expected. I picked up my keys. I had been dreading this conversation since October. Since the hallway in his apartment when I shook Maddox's hand and said "nice to meet you" and built a wall around the truth so fast I could still hear the mortar setting. I had been dreading it through the media room and the library and the coffee shop and every moment in between when I'd made the calculation that keeping it quiet was better than the alternative. Now it was here. And standing in my room with my keys in my hand and my jacket half on, I felt something I had not expected. Relief. Not the clean kind, not problem solved, not finished. The complicated kind, the kind that comes when a thing you've been waiting for finally arrives and you realize the waiting was heavier than the thing itself. I was tired of the quiet version. I was tired of the careful management and the rules and the 3 years of making myself easy to overlook. I put my jacket on properly. I went to my brother's apartment. I was ready to be seen. Chapter 20. Sibling Rule. Ren's POV. Cole answered the door before I could knock. He must have heard me on the stairs, he knew my footsteps the way I knew his laugh, some knowledge that lived in the body rather than the brain. He stood in the doorway and looked at me and he wasn't doing any of the things I'd been bracing for, no captain face, no controlled composure, no expression that meant he'd made a decision before I arrived and was waiting to deliver it. He just looked like Cole. My brother. Tired around the eyes. A mug in one hand. Still in his practice gear from the waist down and a different shirt on top, which meant he'd changed hastily, which meant he'd been home for a while and hadn't fully settled. He stepped back. I came in. We sat at the kitchen table. Same as every real conversation we'd ever had, the table, 2 chairs across from each other, whatever we needed to say between us. When our dad had told us our grandmother was sick. When Cole had told me he was choosing Ashford over 2 bigger programs because of the coaching staff and he'd needed someone to say it out loud to first. When I had told him, sophomore year, about the teammate of his who had said something to me at a party that had made me feel small for 3 months before I told anyone. The kitchen table had done a lot of work over the years. Tell me what you know, I said. He told me. The party, the stranger, the coffee shop, Maddox had given him the outline, clean and factual, in the way I had come to understand Maddox gave most things. Then Cole had done the math on the library and the arena hallway and the media room meetings and the specific quality of the professional I had used every single time he'd asked me about the piece. I filled in the rest. I watched his face while I talked. I had spent 20 years reading that face and I read it now, the surprise that wasn't quite surprise because some part of him had half known, and the hurt underneath it, not at me but at the situation, at the 2 months of it happening in the corner of his world without him seeing it. And then something else. Something I had less practice reading on him because I hadn't seen it directed at me before. Something that looked, cautiously, like admiration. You ran the story anyway, he said. Even with all of this happening. I'm going to run it, I said. Not yet. But yes. He nodded slowly. Even knowing what it's going to cost. It's the right story, I said. The people it's going to cost had choices. They made bad ones. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he looked at the table, and he was quiet in the way that meant he was working towards something he hadn't said yet, not avoiding it, just finding the door. When you started at Ashford, he said, I was terrified. I waited. Not of you making bad choices. You've never made bad choices, you've always been the most careful person in any room you're in and I've always known that. He turned his mug in his hands. I was terrified of being the reason you got hurt. Of someone from my world, my teammates, my friends, people who knew who you were because of me, using that knowledge to get close to you in a way that wasn't. He stopped. There were 2 guys. Before you came to Ashford. Guys I trusted, both times, and both times he stopped again. I know, I said quietly. I wasn't there, he said. Either time. I found out after and there was nothing, his voice went flat in the way voices went flat when they were keeping something in. There was nothing I could do. And I swore when you came here that I would make sure that never happened to you. In my world. On my watch. I looked at my brother's face. The underneath one. The one that was just Cole, the 18-year-old who had called me from his first college dorm room at midnight because he missed home and wasn't going to tell anyone else that, the 21-year-old who had driven 4 hours in a snowstorm to sit with me after a hard semester without being asked, the person who had put a photo of us on his refrigerator and kept it there because he looked at it every day. And so you made rules, I said. I made rules, he said. Instead of just, he exhaled. I think I made rules instead of just being your brother. The kitchen was very quiet. I thought about freshman year in the Boundary and Don't Make Me Choose and 3 years of making myself small enough to fit the shape of what he needed. I thought about how I had done it willingly, genuinely, because I loved him and I understood him and I had told myself it was fine. I thought about Maddox in a corner at a party, moving over on a step without being asked. I needed a brother, I said. Not a security detail. Cole looked at me. You can't protect me from everything, I said. And when you try, you don't protect me, you just make me smaller. You make me someone who doesn't exist in whole rooms of her own life because it's easier for you. He didn't argue. That was the thing about Cole at his best, he didn't argue when he was wrong. He just sat with it, face open, and let the truth land. Yeah, he said. I know. We sat with it together for a while. The table held us the way it always had. There were still things to say, about Michigan State, about what Maddox needed to tell him, about Jordan and what came next, and none of those things were getting resolved tonight. This wasn't that kind of conversation. This was the kind that opened something up and left it open, which was messier than closing it but the only way anything actually changed. I'm sorry, Cole said. I mean that. I know you do, I said. He nodded. He picked up his mug and drank and set it down again and looked at me with an expression that was almost back to normal, not quite, but moving in that direction. The captain face returning, but softer. The Cole face. Do you actually like him, he said. No performance in the question. No edge. Just Cole, asking the thing that mattered, looking at me the way he looked at me when he genuinely wanted to know something rather than when he was already preparing a reaction. I didn't hesitate. Yeah, I said. He absorbed that. I watched him do it. He looked at the table and then somewhere past my shoulder and then back at me. He's a good man, he said. Slowly. Like he was checking each word before he used it. I wouldn't have been friends with him if he wasn't. I know people, Ren. I know when someone's real. A pause. He's real. Something in my chest loosened. Some specific tightness I had been carrying for 2 months released a few degrees. That doesn't mean, Cole said, and his voice shifted back toward something more familiar, the drier edge, the one that appeared when he was feeling something he didn't want to be entirely obvious about, that I'm not going to make his life difficult. I looked at him. His mouth was doing the thing that meant he was fighting a smile and winning but only barely. I laughed. It came out before I could do anything about it, real and sudden and a little ragged around the edges from 2 months of not having much to laugh about. Cole's face broke into something that matched it, reluctant and real, and for a moment we were just us in his kitchen the way we had always been, the two of us at the table with everything complicated and still okay at the center of it. It felt like breathing again. Like a window open in a room that had been closed too long. Like myself. Chapter 21. Michigan State. Maddox's POV. I had rehearsed this conversation 6 times. Not out loud, in my head, on the drive over, standing in Cole's parking lot for 4 minutes before I went up. I had run through the different versions, the ordered one where I gave him the facts first and the context after. The one that started with the player's name to get the worst part out immediately. The version where I asked him to sit down first so I wasn't watching him absorb it while standing. I scrapped all of them at the door. When Cole let me in at 11:50 on a Thursday night he was in sweats, and his expression told me he had been waiting, not impatiently, but the way you waited when you knew something was coming and had decided to be ready for it. He'd gotten Ren's text that afternoon, I knew. She'd told him there were things I needed to tell him myself. She had not told him what those things were. That was the deal we'd made. Mine to tell. I stepped inside. I didn't sit down. I stood in the middle of his kitchen and I looked at him and I started talking. The player's name is Danny Rourke, I said. Cole's face didn't move. But something behind it did, a flicker, fast and then controlled. He knew the name. Of course he knew the name. Michigan State, 3 years ahead of me, I said. Arrived the same year I did. We had overlapped once in juniors, a tournament. I didn't know him well, just enough to recognize him when I got there. I stopped. Kept my voice even. He had a pattern. With women around the program. It had been going on for at least 2 seasons before I got there and everyone knew and nobody had said anything because he was good and the program was good and the people in charge had made a calculation. Cole stood very still by the counter. I saw something in November of my junior year, I said. Something that wasn't ambiguous. I went to the compliance office the next morning. I had it in writing. I had the name of one other player who had seen things. I believed that was how it worked. You report it, it gets handled, the institution does the thing it's supposed to do. It didn't, Cole said. Quiet. Flat. The compliance officer filed it and sat on it for 3 weeks and then called me in to tell me that after a thorough review they couldn't substantiate the claim. I looked at him directly. The compliance officer's last name was Merrick. The coach's last name was Merrick. I did not know that when I filed. Cole's jaw moved. The other player who'd seen things was asked to submit a written statement, I said. He did. It disappeared. He stopped being asked to submit things. I kept going because stopping would make it harder to start again. I went above the compliance office. I sent a documented account to the athletic director. I had email confirmation he received it. A pause. He retired 4 months later. The case was absorbed into a review process with no timeline and no public disclosure. And Rourke, Cole said. Still there, I said. Still playing. Got a full senior year and a draft mention in 3 regional publications. I let that sit for a second. And I got reduced ice time, a coaching staff that stopped putting me in the lineup notes, and a quiet suggestion from the assistant coach, verbally, no paper trail, that my future at Michigan State was going to depend on my ability to be a team player. The kitchen was very quiet. I was watching Cole's face the way I had watched things all my life, looking for the play developing, reading the moment before it happened. I saw him processing the facts in order, building the picture the way a careful person builds it, fitting each piece to the next. I saw the moment he had enough of the structure to understand the shape of the whole thing. And I saw the moment he recognized the name again. Not the first time, the second. The deeper one. The one that connected Danny Rourke, the Michigan State player, to Danny Rourke, the 18-year-old junior league teammate, the guy in the photo from a road trip somewhere that Cole had shown me once on his phone, laughing with an arm around 2 other guys, the easy photograph of a friendship from 6 years ago. Cole looked at the floor. He didn't say anything for a long time. I didn't fill the silence. I had learned that some silences needed to be left alone. They were doing their own work and interrupting them only made the work harder. How long have you known, he said finally. That he and I. Since your first story about him, I said. 2 weeks after I got here. You mentioned the junior league team, the season, and the name. I put it together. He looked up. And you didn't say anything. I didn't know you. And then I knew you and I stopped. There was never a good time. The longer it went without me saying it, the harder it was to find the door. Cole nodded slowly. He wasn't accusing me, the nod wasn't that. It was the nod of someone accepting information that was hard but not surprising in the way that things weren't surprising when they confirmed something you'd been avoiding knowing. He moved away from the counter. He walked to the kitchen table and he pulled out a chair and he sat down. He put both hands flat on the table and he looked at them. I stood in the middle of his kitchen. He came to my grandmother's funeral, Cole said. His voice was very even. 3 years ago. He drove 6 hours. I thought, he stopped. I thought he was one of the good ones. I didn't say anything. 6 years, he said. I've had this guy in my phone. I've sent him a message on his birthday for 6 years. He pressed his hands harder against the table. I never knew. No, I said. You knew. Not an accusation. Just a statement, following the logic. You knew who he was to me when you got here and you sat on it. Yes. He looked up at me. His face had gone through several things in the past 5 minutes and had landed somewhere that was harder to read than anger, something more internal, more layered, the expression of a person rearranging a room inside himself that had been furnished a certain way for a long time. You protected a bunch of people you didn't know, he said. At Michigan State. People you had no obligation to. You filed the report, you pushed it up the chain, you put your name and your scholarship and your career trajectory on the line. He stopped. 4 people you didn't know. I didn't do it for them specifically, I said. I did it because staying quiet wasn't something I was able to do. Not about that. I kept my voice level. That's not the point. Yeah, I know, Cole said. That's what I said. You did it because it was right. At a cost you paid alone. He looked at me. I know what that costs. I know what it takes out of a person. I was quiet. He sat back in the chair. He ran one hand through his hair, which he almost never did, a tell, one of the only ones he had. I sent him a birthday message in September, he said. 30 days after you got here. He laughed once, short and without anything funny in it. He responded with a voice memo. How are you? How's the new season? Same old Danny. He said the name like it had a different flavor now. Cole, I said. I'm not angry at you, he said. I want to be clear about that. I've been sitting with this since Ren texted me and I've been deciding what I actually feel and it's not. He stopped. It's not you I'm angry at. I know. But I need to sit with it, he said. The Rourke part. I can't just file that and move on tonight. I know that too. He looked at me from across the kitchen. The distance between us was maybe 8 feet and it felt like the most honest 8 feet I'd stood in for a long time. No management. No careful version. Just the full weight of a thing, shared between 2 people who both knew what it weighed. You protected a bunch of people you didn't know, he said again. Almost to himself. At the cost of your own career trajectory. That's not how I'd frame it, I said. I know that's not how you'd frame it. He met my eyes. That's what I said. That's what I'm saying to you. I looked at him. I would have done the same thing, Cole said. He said it quietly, with the specific certainty of someone who had thought about it already and was telling me the result. I want you to know that. If I had been in that locker room, with that coach, and I'd seen what you saw, he didn't finish. He didn't need to. I would have done exactly what you did. I stood in his kitchen at midnight and felt something shift. Not everything, there was too much still raw for everything to shift at once. But something. A specific pressure I had been carrying since the day I had left East Lansing with a box of gear and a transfer request that nobody had tried to talk me out of. A pressure that had lived in my chest for a year like a held breath. I breathed out. It was not fixed. It was not finished. Cole was going to need time with the Rourke piece, and there were going to be more conversations, and the investigative story Ren was building was going to land publicly eventually, and when it did there would be a whole new set of things to navigate. But Cole Calloway was sitting at his kitchen table at midnight telling me he would have done the same thing. That was not nothing. That was, in fact, more than I had let myself expect. I drove home at 12:40. I sat in my parking lot the way I'd been sitting in parking lots all semester whenever something happened that needed time to settle before I took it inside with me. The weight was there. It was always going to be there in some form. That wasn't the kind of thing that disappeared completely. But something in the distribution of it had changed. I could feel it differently. Less like something I was holding alone and more like something that had been set on a bigger surface and was being held by more than just my hands. Shared, I thought. Not gone. Not clean. But distributed now. Lighter in the specific way that things got lighter when someone else finally knew the full shape of them and didn't flinch. I sat in the dark for a few more minutes. Then I went inside. Chapter 22. Overtime. Ren's POV. The piece ran on a Tuesday. Not the Michigan State investigation, that one was still being built, carefully, source by source, document by document, the way structural things got built. That one would run when it was ready and not a day before. This was the profile. The real one, the version I had gone back and rebuilt from scratch after everything, after the coffee shop and the library and the arena hallway and all the things I now knew that I hadn't known when I'd filed the first competent hollow draft. I had rewritten it in 2 days in the kind of focused sprint that only happened when you finally understood what you were actually writing about. It was the best thing I had put my name on. I knew that before it ran. Barbara confirmed it when she handed it back with one line of changes and said, "Don't change your style, Calloway. Whatever you're doing right now, keep doing it." Barbara gave that kind of note maybe twice a year. The piece ran Tuesday morning at 8:42 a.m. By noon it had been picked up by a regional sports journalism newsletter. By 3 p.m. the Courier's social post had 400 shares. At 4:15, a professor from the communications graduate program sent Barbara an email that Barbara forwarded to me with no comment except a single asterisk at the top, which was Barbara's version of a standing ovation. I sat in the journalism building reading room with my laptop and I read the comments and the shares and I let it be real for a few minutes, the work, the thing I had made, the fact that it existed in the world now and was doing the thing good work was supposed to do. Then I closed the laptop and went to my afternoon class and tried to be a normal student for 2 hours, which mostly worked. Cole called that evening. "I read it," he said. "I know. Ren." A pause with something in it. "It's really good." "Thanks." "No," he stopped. "I mean it's really good. Like, the way you wrote him. The way you made him." He stopped again. Cole did not struggle for words often. When he did it meant the words mattered. "You made him real. Not the player. The person. That's what the piece was supposed to do," I said. "Yeah. A beat. I know that now." I heard what was underneath it, the acknowledgement, without stating it directly, that he understood now what the work actually was. That the piece he had told me to stay professional about was the piece that had gotten picked up by a journalism newsletter and forwarded by a graduate professor and shared 400 times. That the work he'd been vaguely nervous about was the work. I did not say any of that out loud. Neither did he. We were both Calloways. We understood what fit inside the space of "I know that now." "How's Maddox?" I asked. "He's good." Cole's voice was careful in a way that meant it was also still in process, still finding where the pieces settled. "We're okay. It'll be okay." "I know it will," I said. "Give me some time with it," he said. "The Rourke thing. I need some time." "Take all the time you need." He was quiet for a moment. "You going to be okay? With Jordan?" "Cole." I stopped him. "Tell me." He exhaled. "Flat. She came to me. Last night. She told me what she'd done. The whole thing. The warning to you, the lobby, the deal she tried to make." Another exhale. "She said she was protecting me." "She was," I said. "In her own way. Wrongly, but she was." "I know that." A long pause. "But she didn't trust me to handle it. She decided what I could and couldn't know and she moved the pieces herself instead of just," his voice got quieter. "I don't need to be managed, Ren. I need people to be straight with me." "I know," I said softly. "She ended it," he said. "Technically I was going to, but he stopped. She beat me to it." I thought about Jordan in the lobby. The way she'd said "I love him" without decoration. I thought about how love and controlling behavior could live in the same person without either of them being fake, and how that made everything harder rather than easier. "I'm sorry," I said. And I meant it. "She wasn't who I thought she was," he said. I put my hand over the phone for a second, just for a second, and I resisted everything in me that wanted to say "I know." "I saw it. I tried to tell you without saying it. Not because it wasn't true but because it wouldn't help. Because he was my brother who was hurting and the last thing a person who was hurting needed was someone saying "I told you so" in whatever language. I just put my hand on his arm, the way you did things in the dark. "I'm sorry," I said again. He was quiet. "Take care of yourself," I said. "Call me if you need anything." We hung up. I sat on my bed and I thought about Cole at his kitchen table with 2 more things to absorb than he'd had last week, and I thought about how much he'd been carrying in the name of holding everything together for everyone around him, and I thought, I should have been a better brother to him too. Not with rules and management and carefully calibrated presence. Just present. The way I asked him to be. That was the thing about seeing something clearly in another person. Sometimes it showed you the same thing in yourself. My phone buzzed at 9:15. Unknown, no, not unknown. Maddox. He'd texted from the same number for 3 months. I knew it now the way I knew Sadie's and Cole's. I read the piece. I set the phone down. Picked it up. You made me sound like a person. I looked at that sentence for a moment. At the specific way he'd said it, not it was good or you did well but you made me sound like a person, which was both the simplest compliment and the one that landed deepest because it was exactly what I had been trying to do. I typed, you are one. That's not that hard to write. The 3 dots came. Held. I watched them. Come outside. I looked up from my phone. The dorm window was across from my desk, a standard double-hung window, dark outside, the parking lot lights making orange pools on the asphalt. I stood up and crossed the room and looked out. He was there. Leaning against the driver's side of his car with his hands in his jacket pockets, looking up. Not at the building in general. At my window specifically. Like he'd known exactly which one it was. He had been here enough times to know. I registered that and stored it. I grabbed my keys from the desk. I didn't get my coat, which I would regret, but the kind of decision that involved a coat would have taken an extra 30 seconds and I was done taking extra time on things. I went outside. Chapter 23. The Full 60. Dual POV. Ren. The cold hit me the second I came through the building's front door and I decided immediately not to care about it. He pushed off the car when he saw me. We met in the middle of the parking lot under one of the orange lights, and I looked at him and he looked at me and neither of us said anything for a moment. He was in a dark jacket, hands out of his pockets now. He looked tired in the way he'd looked tired since the Michigan State conversation, not broken, just carrying something heavy enough that the body noticed even when the face didn't show it. Hey, I said. Hey, he said. We stood there. Are we going to stand in the parking lot, I said, or? He moved without answering. Not toward the building, along the path that ran from the dorm lot toward the main campus quad. I fell into step beside him and we walked, and neither of us said where we were going because there was nowhere specific to go. It was 11 p.m. on a Tuesday night and the campus was mostly quiet, the brick paths lit by the tall lamp posts that made everything look like the inside of an old painting. We walked past the library. Past the communications building where I had spent more hours than I could count. Past the bench outside the journalism building where I had sat with my coffee on the first day of junior year and told myself, this is the year I build something. I had built something. That wasn't nothing. I'm scared, I said. He looked at me sideways. Not of Cole, I said. He and I are, we're okay, or we're going to be. Not of the team's opinion because I stopped caring about the team's opinion sometime around October when I realized I had been caring about it instead of caring about my own. I watched the path ahead of me. Not of the byline or the conflict of interest conversation I'm going to have with Barbara eventually. What, then, he said. This, I said. Whatever this is. What it started as and what it's become. I kept walking. It started at a party where neither of us had a name and it was easy, in a way. Easy things don't cost anything. But this, I gestured at the space between us, the campus, the whole complicated architecture of the past 3 months. This cost things. It already cost things and it's going to keep costing things and I stopped walking. He stopped too. We were in the middle of the quad, lamplit, the campus spread out around us. I don't know how to want something this much and also be this scared of it, I said. Those two things are both true at the same time and I don't have a system for that. He looked at me. The contained face, the held glass, except the glass was thinner now than it had been in October. I had been watching it thin since the coffee shop. Since the library. Since the phone call at 11:15 when he told me a year's worth of Michigan State in the most level voice he had and I'd heard underneath it every single thing the level voice was covering. The night of the party, he said. I waited. I had been in that city for 3 days. I had unpacked my gear and met my coaching staff and told myself that Ashford was a clean start and I was going to be a clean version of myself here. He looked at the lamplit path ahead. And then Reeves told me Tyler Chen was having people over and there would be food, and I went because I was hungry and I wasn't ready to be in my apartment alone again. He paused. I spent 35 minutes in the corner by the back stairs before you came around the corner. I remember, I said. I had been telling myself for 2 years, at Michigan State, that I couldn't afford to. He stopped. Started again. I had been performing myself for 2 years. The version of me that was focused and manageable and didn't have complications. Because complications were what had gotten me pushed out and I was not going to let that happen again. He looked at me. And then you sat down next to me. And for the first time in 2 years I wasn't performing anything. I was just in a corner at a party talking to someone who was funnier than me and noticed things and didn't need me to be the focused manageable version. I needed you to move over on the step, I said. You needed me to move over on the step, he said. That was the whole thing. You knew within 20 minutes, I said. Something crossed his face. I knew within 20 minutes that you were going to be a problem. A pause. The specific kind of problem that you don't actually want to solve. I looked at him. He looked at me. The quad was quiet around us. No one else out here at this hour, just the lamps and the cold and the bare branch trees and the sound of November in an upstate New York campus at 11 p.m. I could see his breath. You should have led with your name, I said. You should have asked for it, he said. I was being careful. So was I. It would have been simpler. Everything would have been simpler, he said. None of it would have been this. I thought about that. About the specific math of it. If we had exchanged names, I would have known, I would have walked away, I would have filed it under very attractive stranger, not worth the complications, and I would have gone home and written my 1,500 words and built my careful ordinary life without any of this in it. Major penalty, I said. He looked at me. Both of us, I said. Withholding information, failure to identify, conduct that directly caused a complicated situation, 2 minutes in the box minimum. He stared at me for a second. Then he laughed. Full, unguarded, real, the kind of laugh that had nothing performed in it, that came from somewhere he didn't usually let things come from. His whole face changed. I had seen him smile, had seen the contained versions of it, the corner of the mouth variety he deployed when something landed. I had not seen this. I filed it. I was a journalist. I filed things. 2 minutes in the box, he said. That's what you landed on. It's accurate, I said. He was still fighting the end of the laugh, which was doing something extraordinary to his face. It's very you. Thank you, I said. He stepped toward me. 1 step, enough to close most of the distance between us, enough that I had to tilt my head slightly to hold his eyes. This close, in the lamplight, his face was completely readable, or maybe I had just spent 3 months learning it well enough to stop needing the distance to see it clearly. I don't have a system for this either, he said. Just so you know. I know, I said. I plan things, he said. I map things out. I am not a person who does things without thinking about them first. I know that too. And I cannot, he said, quietly, think about this anymore. Then stop, I said. He kissed me. Not like the first time had been 2 strangers in a closed room with nothing to lose and no names and no morning after to reckon with. This was nothing like that. This was his hands finding my face in the cold and his forehead dropping briefly against mine before the actual kiss, like he was checking one more time that this was real, and then it was, his mouth on mine, careful at first and then not, warm in the middle of a November campus at 11 p.m. with everything complicated and everything changed and everything still to navigate. I had everything to lose. I was choosing this anyway. When we broke apart I was cold everywhere except where his hands were still curved around my face. He looked at me like I was the specific version of a problem he had decided was worth having. Hi, he said, a little rough. Hi, I said. We should probably. Probably, I agreed. Neither of us moved for another moment. Maddox. I drove home at 1 a.m. The streets were empty, which was the specific mercy of a college town at this hour, just the stoplights running through their cycles for no one and the occasional lit window in a building and the flat dark sky of a November night that had given everything it had. I sat in my parking lot. I did this a lot, sat in parking lots, I was aware. I had spent more time in parking lots this semester than in the 3 previous years of my life combined. There was something about the enclosed space of a car after something significant that worked for me. The quiet. The specific nowhere-ness of it. A place that wasn't inside and wasn't outside and didn't require you to be anything. I sat with the last 2 hours. The quad, the lamplight, her face when she said major penalty with complete seriousness and then watched me come apart laughing over it. The 2 minutes before she said it when she'd been honest in the specific way she was honest, straight, no softening, I don't know how to want something this much and also be this scared of it, and the fact that I had heard it and known it was the same sentence I had been trying to write for 3 months. I got my phone out. Cole's name. I looked at it for a moment. I typed, "We okay?" I put the phone face down on the passenger seat. Then I picked it up again because I wasn't going to pretend. 4 minutes. Long enough that I had mapped out the range of possible responses twice. Then, working on it. Play well tomorrow. I exhaled. Then his name again. Another message coming in. Take care of her or I'll put you through the boards. I stared at that for a long time. The specific language of it, not if you hurt her or you'd better or anything that came from the warning place. Take care of her. Like it was already a thing I was doing and he was simply naming it. Like he had looked at the whole situation and decided that was the sentence that fit. Then, that was a joke. Mostly. I looked at that last word. Mostly. I thought about a photo on a fridge. 3 people laughing at an orientation, and the one in the middle who had spent 3 years making herself invisible in her brother's world and had been brave enough, when it mattered, to stop. I thought about a back porch in October and 2 people who had sat down in the same corner without meaning to and had not been able to find a version of this that didn't end here. I typed back to Cole, I know. I sent it. I put the phone in my pocket. I sat for another minute in the quiet of my car in the parking lot at 1 in the morning. Then I went inside. For the first time since August, the apartment felt like somewhere I was staying. Not a clean page. Not a performance of a fresh start. Just a place where a person lived, where I lived, with the full weight of everything I had brought here and everything I had found here and everything that was still in process. I sat down on my couch. I thought about the ice tomorrow. The plays. The season's second half, which was where things either held or didn't. I thought about the particular sound her voice made when she was being honest and wasn't going to soften it for anyone's comfort. I thought, not a problem. And for the first time in months, I meant it in the right direction. Chapter 24. Postgame. Ren's POV. 3 weeks is not a long time. I know that. I have never been the kind of person who confused momentum with resolution, or the beginning of a thing being fixed with the thing actually being fixed. 3 weeks is just 3 weeks, 21 days of people doing the work, making the choices, showing up differently than they did before and finding out whether different is enough. 3 weeks was enough to see where things were going, though. And where things were going, cautiously and imperfectly and with the particular texture of real progress rather than performed progress, was somewhere better than where they'd been. That counted. The Michigan State story was taking shape. I had 2 sources now, one on record, one not yet, both solid. I had documentation from a Freedom of Information request to the university that had come back with 11 pages of compliance records, 4 of which had sections blacked out in a way that told me exactly what they were trying to hide by hiding it. I had an email chain from a former athletic department administrator who had since moved to a different institution and was willing, carefully, to talk. Barbara knew the shape of it. She had assigned me a faculty advisor for the sourcing process, a former investigative journalist named Marcus who had spent 15 years at regional papers before joining the department, and Marcus and I had been meeting twice a week in his office with the door closed, going through what I had and mapping what I still needed. It was going to be real. It was going to be the kind of story that moved things rather than just described them. It was not ready. But it was going to be ready, and I knew that now in the bone-deep way you knew things when the work was going the way work was supposed to go. I was also, in the meantime, writing other things. The media scholarship follow-up. A piece on the university's new student mental health initiative that Barbara had flagged as needing someone who could write people rather than policy. A short feature on the athletics department's academic support program that was different from the hockey piece, and deliberately so. I was not going to become the sports reporter. I was going to be the reporter who covered sports when there was something worth covering. Barbara had no arguments with that approach. Neither did I. Cole and I had dinner on a Wednesday in the third week. His apartment, bad takeout from the Thai place on Miller Street that we had been ordering from since my first semester because it was the only delivery option that survived the 15-minute drive to his side of campus without becoming something unidentifiable. We ate at the kitchen table. He told me about the season, 8-2, 2 games until the conference stretch, 3 players dealing with minor injuries that weren't minor enough to sit them but complicated enough to shift the line assignments. He talked about it the way he talked about hockey when he wasn't performing, being a captain, practically, with the low-grade anxiety that lived under every coach and every captain at this point in a season, the awareness that the margin between good and not good was thinner than it looked from the outside. I listened. I asked real questions, not journalist questions. He answered them the way you answered questions from family rather than press. We did not talk about Maddox directly. He didn't mention him and I didn't ask him to, because some things needed time to find their shape without being poked at, and I had learned, slowly, the hard way, over 20 years of being a Callaway, that Cole processed things best when you left him room to come to them on his own. What he did do, once, in the middle of a sentence about the defensive line rotation, was stop and look at me and say, "You look different." I waited. "Not different bad," he said. "Just, you look like yourself." I thought about that for a moment. "I think I am," I said. He nodded, and went back to the defensive line rotation, and I filed it in the category of things Cole said instead of the longer things. After dinner he walked me to my car. At the door he hugged me the way he only hugged me when something real had happened, not the quick shoulder clasp hello hug but the actual one, both arms, like he was checking I was still there. "Good," he said, to the top of my head. "Yeah," I said. He let me go. I drove back to campus. I sat in my car for exactly 2 minutes before I went inside, which was progress. The game was on a Friday night. Ashford versus Northeastern, conference implications, the arena full in the way it only got for the games that mattered. I was in the press area with my credential and my camera and 3 other journalists from various campus and local outlets, and I was doing my job, covering the game, taking notes, watching the way the line assignments had shifted from last week's film session, clocking the moments that would make the game story Barbara wanted by 11. Cole was everywhere. That was how he played in the big games, distributed across the ice, less visible on the score sheet and more visible in the structure of every play, the invisible architecture of a team that was playing like a team rather than 5 individuals. 2 assists, both on Maddox's goals. Maddox was something else tonight entirely. I had watched enough hockey this semester to know the difference between a player having a good game and a player who had found something. He had found something. Every line he skated had the quality I had tried to describe in the profile, the earliness of him, the way he was already in the right place before the play arrived there. Both goals were the product of that quality, not fast, not showy, just inevitable. Like he had seen the outcome before it happened and simply gone to meet it. I wrote good notes. I took good photos. I was professional for 60 minutes of regulation and a very tense third period where Northeastern pulled within 1 and the arena went the specific loud of people who are scared of losing something they want. The final buzzer, 4-2, Ashford. The press area started moving, reporters heading for the post-game corridor, the interviews, the quotes. I was capping my lens and gathering my notebook when the team started coming off the ice through the players' entrance, and that was when I saw Cole in my peripheral vision, 3 rows up in the arena seating, already on his phone with his jacket on, about to head down. He caught my eye. He gave me a look that said, "I see you working. I'm not going to make it weird." Then he went back to his phone. That was enough. That was everything, actually. I turned back to the ice. The press area was directly adjacent to the boards corridor, a narrow space between the players' exit and the tunnel that ran to the media room. Standard post-game traffic, players moving in groups, gear bags, the noise of a team that had just won settling into celebration. I was writing the lead sentence of my game story in my notebook, the physical version first, always, before the laptop, when I heard someone stop at the boards directly to my left. I looked up. Maddox was still in full gear. Helmet off, hair damp, the particular look of someone who had just played 60 minutes of high-stakes hockey and had not yet fully returned from wherever they went to do that. He was looking at me. Not at the press area in general. At me. Price. The reporter from the local paper, 2 spots down, raised his recorder. Quick word. Maddox didn't look at him. I felt the other journalists in the press area notice. I kept my expression exactly where it was. Professional. Neutral. The face I had practiced since October until it was effortless. Good game, I said. Clear, even, the voice I used when I was doing my job. Come on, he said. Not come with me. Not a question. Just, come on. The same 2 words you used when someone was performing something they didn't need to perform and you both knew it. The reporter from the local paper had lowered his recorder and was watching us with an expression that had gone from professional to interested in the time it took for that exchange to happen. Someone behind him raised a phone. I heard the shutter click. I looked at Maddox. He looked at me. His face was doing the thing it did when he was saying something with the stillness of it rather than words, patient, certain, completely unbothered by the reporters and the cameras and the noise of the post-game corridor. I thought about Barbara. About the conversation I was going to have with her. About conflict of interest and journalistic standards and the byline on the hockey series that had my name on it and was now going to have a campus photo attached to it of me going through the players' corridor with the subject of the profile. I thought about 3 years of making myself small. About Don't Make Me Choose. About Always Am. About the version of Ren Calloway who had built a careful life in the spaces nobody was using and called it independence. I clicked my pen closed. I put my notebook in my bag. I'll deal with that tomorrow, I said, to no one in particular and entirely to myself. I went through the door. The team hallway was loud and warm and smelled like ice and effort and the specific aftermath of a game that had gone the way you wanted it to go. Players moving, coaches talking, the particular organized chaos of a program in the middle of a winning season. Maddox was beside me. He didn't say anything, he didn't need to. He just walked, and I walked, and the hallway closed behind us, and the press area and the cameras and the campus paper photo that was going to require a conversation with Barbara were on the other side of a door that had swung shut. I looked at the hallway. At the nameplates on the locker room doors. At the staff and players who looked at me with the mild curiosity of people who had been told to expect me eventually and were not particularly surprised. I thought, this is someone else's world. And then I thought, no, it isn't. Not anymore. It had started as Cole's world and Maddox's world and a world I had spent 3 years keeping myself outside of. But I had walked into it one night at a party, and I had written about it for 3 months, and I had fought for a story that lived at the center of it, and somewhere in all of that it had become something else. Not mine in the way that Cole's name above the captain's door was his. Mine in the way that a person could move through a space freely, without apology, without the constant low hum of I don't belong here running underneath every step. The door swung shut behind me. I stood in the hallway and I was exactly where I wanted to be. Not because of him, though he was here, and that was its own real thing. Not because I had fixed anything, because I hadn't fixed everything, because there was still a conversation ahead with Barbara and a story still being built and a brother still in process and a whole second semester of navigating something complicated. But because I had made a choice. With my whole self, for the first time, without reducing myself to fit into a space that was offered rather than claimed. Somewhere new. All my own. Even though it had started as someone else's world. Epilogue. Maddox's POV. 6 months later. Here is what I know about kitchens. They are the truest room in any home. Not the bedroom, not the living room, the kitchen. Because people perform in every other space, even when they don't mean to, but the kitchen is where they drop it. Where they stand around in socks eating food out of containers and talking without thinking about how they're talking. Where the real versions of people show up when they think they're just making coffee. Cole's kitchen had always been that. I had known it from the first real visit in October, when he'd handed me a beer without asking and we'd talked about zone coverage until midnight and I'd gone home thinking, this is what uncomplicated feels like. 6 months later, I was standing in the same kitchen watching it be louder and fuller and more real than it had been then, and I was thinking the same thing. Just bigger. The end-of-season dinner was Cole's tradition, his apartment, his cooking, which was limited but committed, and everyone who mattered crowded into a space that was technically a 2-person kitchen making do as a 12-person one. We had won regionals 3 days ago. The conference championship was in 2 weeks. Everything was going the way it went when a team clicked at the right moment in the right season with the right people in the right positions. Reeves was arguing with 2 of the defensemen about something involving a road trip and a hotel incident that I had heard 3 versions of, and they all got progressively worse, which told you everything about Reeves. The freshman class, Finn among them, had colonized the corner near the refrigerator and were doing the particular thing that first-year players did at end-of-season gatherings, present enough to be included, quiet enough to not overstep. Finn was not quiet. Finn was arguing with his sister. "That movie is objectively good," he was saying, with the specific confidence of an 18-year-old who had not yet learned that objectively was a word people used when they couldn't defend their actual position. "It has a 23% on Rotten Tomatoes," Ren said. She was leaning against the counter across from him with a glass of water and the expression she wore when she had already won an argument and was just waiting for the other person to realize it. "Objectively means I can cite a number. That's my number." "Rotten Tomatoes is a tool of the critical establishment," Finn said. "What does that mean?" "It means critics are wrong sometimes. About 63% wrong. Because that's what a 23 means." "You're doing math at a party," Finn said. "That's your problem. You're doing math." "You used the word objectively," she said. "You opened the math door." "I just walked through it." Finn looked at her with the expression of someone who had grown up losing arguments to this person and had not yet fully adjusted to being larger than her. "I don't know why I bring things up with you." "Because you love me," she said pleasantly, and drank her water. I had been watching this for 40 seconds without meaning to. I looked back at the living room, at the game on the low volume on the TV, at Reeves gesturing widely at the hotel story's climax. Cole appeared beside me with 2 beers. He handed one over without a word, which was how Cole did most things that mattered, without announcement, just the action. We stood together at the edge of the kitchen and watched the room. This was a thing we did now. Not a ritual, exactly, but a recurring moment, the 2 of us at the edge of whatever was happening, watching it, not needing to narrate it. It had started somewhere around January, after the Michigan State conversation and the things that had settled and the things that were still settling, and it had just kept happening because it fit. "You were right," Cole said. I looked at him. Back at orientation. He was watching the room, not me. "When I gave you the speech. About keeping things simple. About not having complications." He drank. "You said not a problem." "I did," I said. "For a minute I thought you meant her." He kept his eyes on the far side of the kitchen, where Ren had just made another point and Finn was throwing his hands up in surrender. "Like, specifically. That you were saying she wasn't going to be a problem." I was quiet. "But that's not what you meant," Cole said. "No," I said. "It wasn't." "You meant everything else," he said. "The program stuff, the transfer adjustment, the locker room, you meant all of that wasn't going to be a problem. You were going to keep your head down and do the work and not cause noise." He paused. "She wasn't on your radar." "Not yet." "Not yet," I said. He nodded slowly. He had a particular quality, Cole, of saying things he had clearly been sitting with for a long time without any of the weight of the sitting showing in the saying. Like he had done all the processing elsewhere and only brought you the clean result. I had noticed it in October and I understood it better now. It was the same thing he did on the ice, the same quality of being already somewhere before the play arrived there. "I needed time with it," he said. "The whole thing. I know. I still have mornings where I think about Danny Rourke and I want to." He stopped. "But I needed to know. You understand that. Whatever it cost, I needed to know." A pause. "Ren's piece is going to run." "I know. I've read the draft." She let me read it. Something moved in his face. "It's good. The way she writes things, she makes it real. She makes it matter." He looked into his beer. "I'm going to have a lot of conversations when it runs. People asking me things. Press." He paused. "I'm ready for it." I looked at him. "You sure?" "No," he said, simply. "But I'll be ready anyway." That was Cole at his best. Not the version that pretended everything was handled. The version that was honest about the gap between ready and ready anyway and chose to show up in it regardless. "Don't screw it up," he said. I looked at him. He was still watching the room. His face was completely even. "With her," he said. "I'm saying that once. I'm not going to keep saying it." "Okay," I said. "She spent a long time making herself easy for the people around her," he said. "She's done doing that. I think you know that." "I know it." "Good." He drank. "Then we're done talking about it." Across the kitchen, Ren had apparently ended the movie argument sufficiently and was listening to something Finn was saying with the particular focused attention she gave things she actually found interesting. She had her water glass in both hands and her head tilted slightly. The pose I had learned meant she was filing things for later, and she looked easy, in a way that I had not always seen her look. Not performed ease. The real kind, the kind that came when a person was in a room they had decided to be in rather than a room they were managing their presence in. She glanced up. Found me immediately, across the full width of Cole's kitchen, through Reeves and the defensemen and the freshman cluster and all the noise of 12 people in a too small space. Her eyebrow went up. One of them. The specific one that meant she had noticed I was watching her and wanted to know why. I shook my head slightly. Nothing. She narrowed her eyes. "I don't believe you." I looked at my beer. I was smiling before I could do anything about it, which was a thing she did to me on a reliable basis and which I had stopped trying to prevent. Cole, beside me, said nothing. But I was aware of him watching the exchange with the peripheral attention of someone who had a lot of feelings about it and had decided to have them quietly. That was enough. That was the whole thing, actually, Cole choosing to have his feelings quietly rather than loudly, which was not how he was built, which was what made it mean something. Ren said something to Finn that made him groan, which meant she had won a second argument, and she looked back across the kitchen at me with the expression of someone who wanted to be witnessed being correct. I raised my beer slightly in her direction. She rolled her eyes. But she was fighting a smile and losing. I have a system. I did not always have it. I had discipline, I had focus, I had the ability to plan and map and execute things with a precision that served me well on ice and less well everywhere else. I had built walls where I should have built doors and I had called it self-sufficiency and I had carried a year's worth of weight alone because I had decided, somewhere after Michigan State, that alone was the only version of safe. I had been wrong about that. Not dramatically wrong, quietly wrong, the kind of wrong that takes a long time to name because it looks like good sense from the outside. The kind of wrong that gets undone not all at once but in small moments, a step moved over on a staircase, a pen picked up from a floor, a text sent at 9:15 at night because the planning mechanism had finally stopped running and something true had come through in the gap. Here is what I know now that I didn't know in August. Safe is not the same as right. Careful is not the same as good. And the things worth having are almost never the ones that come without cost, they are the ones where you look at the cost clearly and decide to pay it anyway, with your eyes open, knowing exactly what you're choosing. There are rules. I have always understood the value of rules. They create structure, they protect things, they keep the complicated parts of life from bleeding into the parts that need to stay clean. I am not arguing against rules. But there are things worth every penalty they come with. I know the difference now. Across Cole's kitchen, Ren caught my eye again. This time she didn't raise an eyebrow or narrow her eyes. She just looked at me for a moment, directly, without any of the glass she had once kept between herself and everything. The way she looked at things she had decided were hers. I looked back the same way. Cole said something beside me and I responded and the party kept going and Reeves launched into another story and Finn lost a third argument and the kitchen was warm and loud and full of people who had chosen to be in the same room together. I stood at the edge of it. I thought, this is what uncomplicated feels like. Just bigger than before. End. Major penalty, complete. What are the profitable genres, Amazon? Search intent 14 backend ranking keyword. For the above book which customers will type when they're searching on Amazon, no repetition in order to abide by Amazon guidelines. February 26th. Major penalty, Amazon KDP strategy. Profitable genres, categories to target. Primary category, romance, new adult and college romance. Secondary category, romance, sports. Additional categories to request via KDP support. Romance, contemporary romance. Teen and young adult, romance, contemporary. Teen and young adult, sports and recreation fiction. 14 backend search keywords. No repetition, comma separated, max 50 characters each. College hockey romance, forbidden love. One night stand, brother's teammate. New adult sports romance novel. Hockey player romance, forbidden. Brother's best friend romance book. Campus romance, secret relationship. Enemies to lovers, college athlete. Sports romance, slow burn tension. Forbidden romance, college student. Hockey romance, steamy new adult. Secret romance, athlete journalist. Overprotective brother romance book. Transfer student college love story. Steamy forbidden sports romance novel. Profitable genre tags for metadata. Primary, college romance, sports romance, new adult romance, forbidden love, one night stand romance, hockey romance, brother's best friend, slow burn, secret relationship, campus romance. Recommended book description keywords. Weave naturally into your blurb. One night stand. College hockey. Forbidden romance. Brother's teammate. Secret relationship. Small town college. Steamy romance. Slow burn. Sports romance. New adult. Title/subtitle optimization. Your current title is strong. Consider this refined subtitle structure for Amazon search visibility. Major penalty, a forbidden college hockey romance, higher search volume. Or major penalty, a brother's teammate new adult romance. Comparable authors to reference in AMS ads. Piper Rain. Elsie Silver. Hannah Grace, Icebreaker. L. Kennedy, Off-Campus Series. Nikki Sloan. Emily Rath. Gillian Quinn. These names pull the exact reader audience your book targets and work as product targeting keywords in Amazon advertising campaigns. Give me 250 words intriguing. Amazon SEO, search intent. And suspenseful and suitable. Synopsis ending with a question. From the above story. February 26th. Major penalty. Amazon book synopsis. One night. No names. No complications. That was the deal Wren Calloway made with herself when she slipped out of a stranger's room at 6 in the morning and walked home telling herself she didn't feel bad about it. She was a journalism student with a byline to build, a brother whose hockey world she had spent 3 years carefully avoiding, and a system that had never once failed her. Until the stranger walked through her brother's front door. Maddox Price is everything Wren's rules were designed to prevent, a college hockey player, her brother Cole's new transfer teammate, and the one person on campus who sees straight through every wall she has ever built. He knew who she was the moment he recognized her. He said nothing. She said nothing. They both agreed, silently and completely, that one night was finished. Except nothing stays finished when you share a press credential, a locker room hallway, and a secret that could detonate the most important friendship either of them has. When Wren is assigned the hockey team's transfer profile, professional becomes impossible. When Cole's girlfriend starts making threats, silence becomes dangerous. And when Maddox finally tells Wren the truth behind his transfer, a truth tangled directly in Cole's past, the story Wren has been building threatens to destroy everything before they ever get a chance to choose each other. Two people. Every reason to walk away. One secret neither of them can keep burying. The question isn't whether Cole finds out. The question is, will what they built survive it? Start your own conversation. Author's note. Dear reader, thank you for spending your time with this story. When I first imagined these characters, I wanted to write about people who understand pressure, the kind that comes from the outside, from family, from expectations, and what happens when the walls they've built start cracking open. This story is about the courage it takes to be seen. Not the curated version. The real one. The messy, imperfect, terrified one. I hope that resonated with you. If this book made you feel something, I'd be grateful if you left a review. Reviews help readers find stories like this, and every one means the world to me. With gratitude. Tatum Langley. Acknowledgements. Every book begins with a quiet question. I'm grateful to everyone who helped me find the answer. To my readers, you took a chance on this story, and I couldn't be more thankful. Your messages, your reviews, your enthusiasm, they fuel every late-night writing session. To anyone who has ever built something from nothing, a career, a relationship, a second chance, this one's for you. And to the cold coffee that got me through every draft, you were terrible, and I wouldn't change a thing. About the author. Tatum Langley writes emotionally charged contemporary romance that lives in the space between heartbreak and hope. She believes the best love stories start with two people who are certain they want nothing to do with each other. When not writing, she can be found drinking coffee that went cold hours ago and arguing about sports with strangers on the internet. She lives with two cats who judge her word count daily.